Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. It's our business and reorganization meeting of April 24th, 2012. I will recall the meeting to order. Note that there are 7 board members present, none are absent. We have been in closed session since 6 o'clock for the purposes of approval of minutes of 3:20, 4:03, and 4:10, 2012, and for the purposes of employment of employee and pending litigation. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item this evening on our agenda is a pleasant one. Mr. Pernot, we're going to be recognizing Golden Apple Scholars, I believe.
Yes, and to introduce that, I'm going to ask Diana Smith to come to the podium. Again, this is one in a long series of honoring our York High School students. I know sometimes we take this for granted because these students are up here almost every board meeting to receive some kind of recognition or award, but it's really outstanding that we have such great students at York, supportive faculty and staff that supports these students, the high school administration. It doesn't just happen. It's because of a lot of dedicated efforts. And so this evening, again, another special award. I don't believe we've ever received this one before. Is that correct? I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah, not 2 for 1 year. So with that, I'll let Diana.
While they're coming up, I will note that Ms. Hirsch is going to represent the board for us tonight in also congratulating these scholars.
Thank you so much for asking us to be here tonight, and it really is an honor to introduce 2 of our students, Kelly O'Ryan and Nick Sorrentino, who have been named Golden Apple Foundation Scholars. And I know the board is aware of the Golden Apple Foundation, which is devoted to finding, nurturing, developing great teachers. And each year, the foundation identifies only 100 high school and college students statewide. And it's after a very rigorous application and interview process. And we're so proud that we have 2 students this year. Each of the students receives a $2,500 scholarship for their freshman and sophomore years, and then $5,000 for their junior and senior year. And then during the summer, they attend every summer, starting this summer, and then each summer during college, they will attend a 6-week intensive institute in Chicago, where they will observe teachers and work with mentor teachers and so forth. And in return, they commit to teaching 5 years after they graduate in an Illinois school of high need. Each of the students will receive a total of $23,000. So a hand for them and for their parents. Happy for their parents on that one. I want to just say a word or 2 about each one. Kelly is the daughter of Michael and Patricia O'Ryan. She went to elementary and middle school at Visitation. She has an older sister who was an 09 graduate, I think, and a younger brother, Connor, who's a junior. She cites Becky Marionetti, our choir musical theater director, as a key influence for her. Miss Marionetti encouraged her to apply for this award. She says that Miss Marionetti is somebody who holds very high expectations for her, encouraged her not only to develop her singing talent, which is considerable, but also to embark on acting. And you may have seen her a week ago in Godspell. She was amazing and quite funny, I would say, as well. She is in our Invite to Teach program at Jefferson, working with Kelly Fullerton's first grade class. So this is Kelly. Sure. And Nick Sorrentino is the son of Pete and Jerry Sorrentino. You may know that his mother is a Reach teacher here in the district. He attended Edison and Sandburg. He has a twin sister, Stephanie, and a younger sister, Carolyn, who is a sophomore. And in addition to many other pursuits, He is both a track and cross-country runner at York. He cites many people who have been influential for him, including a number of his relatives, his mother, but also a number of relatives who he said are in teaching. He said also his father, that he identifies his father as a role model to him because he works to fulfill the goals, to live the life that he wants. And he describes also Coach Newton as a great teacher and coach who demands excellence, as we know, and is very passionate about what he does. So it's my pleasure to introduce these students to you. Thank you.
You get to stay put for just one more minute. Good evening. I just wanted to make a couple comments before I read the official board proclamation. I think the thing that is so inspiring to me is that these young adults, as we now call them, have clearly succeeded and done very well within our school system that we offer here in Elmhurst. And I think one of the things that is so impressive to me is that I know when I was 18 or 19 years old preparing to go off to college, I didn't have a good, solid understanding of what it was that I wanted to do with my life. I think most of us didn't. I think it's a very rare thing that a young adult at this stage in life can demonstrate, and in the case of a student who's already had an opportunity to be in the classroom, to really commit at this stage in their lives to something that is not only 4 years of undergraduate studies, which are challenging, but also committing to providing a great educational experience for our kids in need in Illinois for 5 years after that. So think about it. At 18, were you ready to make a 9-year commitment in addition to 6 weeks each of your summers between college years? I think what it clearly demonstrates to me is that the leaders and the mentors in your lives have really allowed you to flourish, and you are clearly committing to a vocation. I think that's what it is for most of our teachers in Elmhurst. I think they have a pure love of our kids and of teaching and of seeing the light bulb go off in our kids when they finally grasp something that they've been struggling with. So I'm very, very impressed and proud. And I think that is something that not only should you be very proud of, but I think your parents clearly, who provided, I'm sure, a lot of love, support, maybe a little guidance along the way. So the tradition with the Board of Education is that we read a proclamation into the record. So if you will allow me, whereas the Golden Apple Scholars of Illinois program recently announced the selection of 135 students who have demonstrated passion and commitment to pursuing a career in education, and whereas this program is designed to address the urgent need for resilient and creative teachers serving Illinois students in economically and educationally disadvantaged schools, and whereas York Community High School seniors Kelly O'Ryan and Nicholas Sorrentino have been named Golden Apple Scholars for 2012, and whereas these scholars represent a diverse group of young people from across the state, chosen from 1,285 nominated students through a rigorous selection process, which includes a written application completed by 350 of the nominated students, and interviews with Golden Apple. And whereas, according to Dominic Belmonte, Golden Apple President and CEO, because of the comprehensive focus that the Scholars Program offers, these students are very prepared and truly make a difference in the classroom. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to our community, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to Kelly O'Ryan and Nicholas Sorrentino, their parents and teachers, for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations. Kelly, this has the proclamation and the program. Congratulations. You know, do me a favor. Walk on this side of the table and shake all the board members' hands. Congratulations. Here you go, Nick. Congratulations. Good luck.
Welcome to the profession.
And now, in a very untypical, untransparent move, we're going to have another recognition that is not on our agenda this evening. We've received an award for transparency. Mr. Purnell.
Yes, as I told the board, this is my flaw tonight, that I forgot to put this on our recognition agenda, but that doesn't mean it's not important, and that I think it's a special award that Elmhurst 205 should be proud of. So let me introduce Brian Constan, who is the Director of Outreach at the Illinois Policy Institute, and he is here to share with us a special award for Elmhurst 205 this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm tall. I'm hoping this picks me up. It's been a while since I've been to District 205. I played basketball at Conan High School, and we played in the York Holiday Tournament, and we were the champions in 1996. But the reason that I'm here tonight is actually that District 205 has surpassed one of my home districts in regards to local government transparency. Just a little bit of background, the Illinois Policy Institute is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy organization based in Chicago and Springfield. And one of our missions is to ensure government transparency for local government agencies across the state. And we've created a project called the Local Transparency Project, which grades local government entities across the state on a 10-point transparency checklist on things such as contact information for elected officials, information about what's going to happen at board meetings, financial information like budgets and audits and expenditures, contracts, and things of that nature. And we recently did an audit of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205, and you guys received an award, and I'd like to read to you a little bit that we have on the certificate here. It's the Local Transparency Project Certificate of Achievement, and on this date, April 24, 2012, the Illinois Policy Institute recognizes Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 for its significant improvements in proactive online transparency. Based on an initial and follow-up audit of District 205's website, Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205, with a score of 90.6%, is the highest ranking school district in the state of Illinois, graded by the Illinois Policy Institute's Local Transparency Project, which is 6/10ths of a point higher than one of my home school districts, District 54. So that's why I had to mention that we won the tournament so long ago.
It's good to know it didn't bother you.
Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 is applauded for setting a new standard in school district transparency. District 205 posts more financial and participatory information online than any other school district in the state per the Illinois Policy Institute's 10-point transparency checklist. So congratulations to everyone here, the board, superintendent, president, and also to Malia Smith for helping us out. Where is she? Oh, she's over there, for helping us out in this journey, as well as all the other staff that helped out on this as well. So I wanted to present this certificate to the board, if everyone wanted to come up here for a brief photo. This is for you. Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Congratulations. Nice job.
Thank you, Mr. Costin, for making the trip this evening. We appreciate it. This board has always prided itself on transparency. And I do want to give a special thanks to Malia Smith and her department. Who am I missing?
I just want to thank our internal auditor, Helen Perez, and Kathy Schrader, for helping with this project.
Right. We had quite a few of the pieces in place, and they were able to step up and make sure that everything that is required is now in place and then some. So we appreciate it, and I know each of the board members feel strongly about being as transparent as we can be, and I cut you off. I'm sorry.
You stole my thunder, but that's okay. But from the superintendent, I just want to say I want to thank Malia and her staff, Chris Welton and his staff, for really pulling together. When we initially got the score back in October, I believe, November time period, we weren't satisfied with that score, and they took it upon themselves to really increase that score, and the result is the recognition you received this evening. So the credit goes to the staffs on both those departments for taking that on. So I really appreciate those efforts by that staff and those individuals, Kathy Schrader and Helen Perez, who really took this on as a real project. So thank you.
The next item on our agenda is public comments. 8 people have requested to address the board this evening. I'm going to read your names 2 at a time. First one, come to the podium. The second one can kind of hang in the wings a little bit. When you get there, I would ask that you please state your name and address for the record and to limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is not the practice of the board to respond to public comments at this time, but I wish to assure you that each board member is listening carefully. The first person is Daniel Maxon, followed by Nick Sorrentino.
Hello, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf. My name is Daniel Maxon, and I live at 150 West Harrison Street, in the southern half of Elmhurst. I have a 200 plus signatures here in regards to Mr. Ware and his RIF. I would like to speak on his behalf because I'm a cross-country athlete as well as a track athlete at York, and I've had many great experiences with Mr. Ware. He's a great coach and a great man and a great inspiration to many of us. We actually have an entire kind of wing over here in his support, and we are here to basically say that we would like him to be rehired for next year because we feel as though he is a great inspiration to many of us and has really made a huge impact on all of us. He's really shown me in specific how to be a better person, more driven towards excellence, and to be a better person as a whole. And I think that he really deserves to stay in the Elmhurst 205 district because he really does help a lot of us. And that is all.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nick Sorrentino, a familiar face, followed by his sister Stephanie Sorrentino. I believe it's his sister.
Yeah. I'm also speaking on behalf of Mr. Ware. I'd just like to say Tom Hedman, he graduated last year, and he's currently running at UW Parkside in Wisconsin, and Kenosha, Wisconsin, and he said that the only people who don't like Mr. Ware as a coach are the ones who don't like working hard. He makes people work hard, and he makes them achieve their goals. Mr. Ware lives in Oak Park, Illinois, and he has to drive in every morning at 6 a.m. so then he can help us work out and become better athletes and also better people. He's there before some people that actually live in Elmhurst, and he does this every day. And he also shows up to our Saturday practices, and if he could, he would be at our Sunday practices. Mr. Ware is very committed with the program, and he knows a lot about strength training. He makes us better people, and he also makes us a lot better athletes. And I just ask that you do not rift him and you keep him on board.
Thank you. The next speaker is Stephanie Sorrentino, followed by Margaret Harrell.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Sorrentino. I live at 401 Atwater Avenue. I'm speaking on behalf of all the Ware's Warriors over there. First of all, I want to say that we made these T-shirts last year, I believe, just because Mr. Ware is a fantastic coach. The entire district knows of the cutbacks that need to be made in order to get out of debt. Although the school board made its decision on which employees they're cutting, I believe they made a huge mistake. Recently, I've been informed that a very dignified, hardworking, important individual may not have his job in this district in the fall of 2012. His name is Clyde Ware. I understand that some of the employees must be let go in order to meet the cutting of $1 million in the district's budget. However, Clyde Ware should not be cut because of everything he has accomplished for this entire community. He's an amazing gym teacher, coach, and an inspiration to all. First off, Mr. Ware is a great gym teacher. In fact, he's one of the few gym teachers at York who actually improves a student's fitness. He makes sure everybody works really hard, and he makes sure that we actually get in shape, and that's what gym is designed for. He has his students do push-ups, sit-ups, run laps on a daily basis, as other gym teachers just do it a few times a week. Also, Mr. Ware is the only African-American teacher at York. There's other aides and hall monitors that are of color, but he's the only teacher. If we were to lose him, it would be a true tragedy because York and Elmhurst needs to be more diverse in order for children to thrive in our community. It would be terrible to let Mr. Ware go because then there will be no African-American teachers at York, and the students will suffer because of the huge lack of diversity at our school. Secondly, Mr. Ware is our sprinting coach for girls track, and he's an assistant coach for the boys cross country team. Next year, if Mr. Ware isn't there, our teams will have an enormous disadvantage because we will only have a couple of coaches for 18 events, which is for track and field. This wouldn't work at all because sprinting and jumping make up over half of the events in track and field, and the coaches would be spread way too thin, and we wouldn't be able to coach all the events alone. Therefore, our entire team would suffer. Last but not least, Clyde Ware is not only a coach and a teacher, he's a mentor and an inspiration to all. He's a former Marine who has taught me and many others the meanings of hard work and perseverance. He does so much more than just coach. He earns respect while giving it back. He has not only taught me about track, but also about life. Losing Mr. Ware will not only affect me, my team, and my school, but an entire community. He is a very important and respected individual in this district, and I believe he should be able to continue his teaching and coaching at York. We love him, and it would be devastating to lose a man like Mr. Ware in our district. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Margaret Harrell, followed by David Grotto.
Good evening. I'm here also to speak about Mr. Ware. The track team is here, and they've already talked about his commitment to excellence and the intensity that he brings to the team, as well as to the classroom. I'm here to mention another factor, the diversity factor that Mr. Ware represents. 4 years ago, when my oldest daughter was coming to the high school, to York High School, I made an appointment with the assistant principal and the principal to talk about my concerns specifically about diversity. I was aware of the fabulous education that York High School and the District 205 represented. I was also very aware of the facilities which had been recently remodeled. What I was most concerned about was who was going to be my daughter's role model. We have lived in the community for over 18 years, approximately 20 years, and we are blessed with many fabulous neighbors and friends. And yet, being a minority in Elmhurst can still be lonely, and I'd also like to add, somewhat intimidating. Over the years, I've witnessed many changes. I'm comforted by the growing minority population. It is beneficial for all students in our community. It represents the world in which we live in. Mr. Ware is the only African-American teacher at York. For a growing population of students, Mr. Ware is their role model. So Mr. Ware represents more than one of the numerous talented and dedicated teachers in our district and York High School. He's more than a committed and inspiring coach. Mr. Ware is York's symbol of their commitment to diversity. It would be a major loss to lose this role model. Thank you.
Next speaker is David Grotto, followed by Chloe Grotto.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to take a few minutes to address the school board. My name is David Grotto. I live at 177 East St. Charles Road. Been a resident here for approximately 13 years. I do want to start off saying, as a taxpayer, I really do want to commend the school board for making some very difficult decisions. I understand that we have a financial crisis and hard decisions absolutely need to be made. Also, certainly would like to address the administration of York High School, that I really understand that the decisions certainly are hard that you had to make and what staff will stay and will go. I come to you today actually with wearing three hats. One is a taxpayer, one is certainly as a concerned father, but also a health professional. And I just prepared something very small that I'd like to read to you today. It has come to my attention that Coach Clyde Ware of York High School will be losing his employment as a side consequence of the new teachers agreement. I understand some hard decisions had to be made in light of our present financial situation, as I said. However, I think it's important that you know what an amazing coach he is and would like to share a brief story of how he's influenced my children to be more active. Both of my daughters who attend York have historically struggled with being physically active. However, since joining the track team, I've seen some amazing transformations in them both physically and mentally. This drive that Coach Ware instilled in them has also inspired them to be better in their academic performance and has also given them self-confidence to take on more challenging coursework and to pursue more rigorous career paths. Due to his influence, he has molded my oldest daughter, Chloe, into someone who was formerly wanted no part of physical activity to now being a top varsity contender for pole vault and sprints. I can honestly say that though many teachers and other coaches have touched my daughter's lives, I can honestly say no one outside of our family has had such life-transforming influence on them. My concern is not only as a father whose daughters were losing their coach, but also as a health professional, registered dietitian, who is seeing a growing trend in gutting sports and physical activity programs as the sacrificial lambs when budgets get tight. Unfortunately, this knee-jerk response to correct dire financial scenarios has devastating long-term economic consequences that are already impacting the nation right now as we speak. As you may be aware, we have not only an obesity epidemic in this country for adults, but for children as well. While it appears that the trajectory for adult obesity may be leveling off, the statistics are not encouraging for the rate of obesity in childhood and adolescence. Physical activity is in short supply for the youth of America. The economic impact of the cost of obesity is already unsustainable and truly puts our children's future in peril. The tie to Coach Ware is obvious. We need physical activity experts now more than ever, as the battle cry has also been championed by our First Lady to support for the national Let's Move campaign. But sports and coaches who supervise them have far-reaching impact beyond the appreciation for physical activity and being fit. Coaches also provide our children vital life skills not acquired in the classroom, yet have tremendous application to real life beyond academia. For example, team building, self-worth, sportsmanship, leadership, competitive edge, goal setting, and the drive to dig deeper, test our abilities, and to push our limits. Please give consideration to retaining this amazing coach and life influencer who is responsible for many young women and men who will leave York stronger physically, mentally, and spiritually. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Chloe Grotto, followed by Jen Laban.
Hello, my name is Chloe Grotto, and I am speaking on behalf of Mr. Ware. I live at 177 East St. Charles Road in Elmhurst. I just want to speak to you guys really from the heart and show you how Mr. Ware has really made an impact on my life, as well as this room full of girls and boys on the cross-country and track team. When I came to York, I really was never confident of myself. I never had done really a sport. I mean, I tried track in middle school. I'd never been a star athlete. I'd never been good at really that many things. Even academics, I was just kind of mediocre. I joined the track team because my best friend had. And, you know, I kind of just tried to hide in the back, but Mr. Ware found me, and he really just believed in me. And even though I wasn't good my freshman year, sophomore year, I was kind of okay my junior year, I really shined this year because of the belief he had in me, as well as all these other girls and boys in this room, as well at York. He's not only an amazing coach, but he's an amazing teacher. I mean, I know so many kids who are going through a rough time don't have that amazing parental guidance, respect, love. He's that parent for them. He really is. He loves them. He instills that drive in them that I know I feel very strongly today. He's always behind you 100%, and you could always believe in him. He'll always be there. I know he is the most motivated man I've ever seen for physical activity, as my father just explained. It's a horrible epidemic, obesity today, and he is one of the very many people who are trying to instill healthiness and physical activity and eating right and just having the motivation and love and drive to do it. And I know he's instilled that in me, and my sister and my family even has changed so much because of him. I worry that if Mr. Ware isn't at York anymore, that we will lose so much of that drive and that confidence he instills, especially in young women. I know I recently got accepted into U of I, and I never would have even dreamed of applying to such a big school if it hadn't been for Mr. Ware. If he hadn't told me that, you know, you can really reach your dreams if you try. So I just really want you guys to please consider and hear from the bottom of our hearts that he's the most inspirational man, and losing him from York would be just a devastation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jen Levon, followed by Katie Padberg.
Hi, my name is Jen Lieben. I'm the art teacher at Sandburg Middle School, so that's kind of my address. I'd like to talk about the last board meeting. There was a fair amount of negative comments made by some board members regarding the contract negotiation process. There was an email sent out from administration to all certified staff on that very same evening, and I'd like to read this email in order to shed some light on the situation and maybe give another side of the story. The email reads, "I wanted you to know that the teacher's contract was approved by the Board of Education tonight. I also want to share with each of you my utmost admiration and respect for the professionalism each of you displayed during this process. I know this has been a very difficult year and a half, filled with uncertainty, confusion, and I'm sure at times frustration. However, in my time with you this year, I continued to observe dedicated teachers who put students above all the other distractions, who continued to work with students on their own time, continued to attend committee meetings, and display the highest qualities of our profession. I look forward with great anticipation to working in partnership with each of you in the future. I am more convinced than ever that with your help, we can create an exceptional educational community for our students. Thank you for putting students first." I'd now like to turn the floor over to our union boss, ETC President Katie Padberg.
Hello, I'm Katie Padberg from Sandburg Middle School in Elmhurst, and as Jen mentioned before, I guess I am one of the union bosses that was referenced at the last board meeting. I'm also an 8th grade teacher at Sandburg Middle School, and I have taught there for 15 years. At the last board meeting, we had the opportunity to hear 2 of the dissenting voices of the board. In the interest of moving forward and collaborating with administration and the school board, we hope that these 2 voices do not reflect the sentiment of the entire board. Based on the 5-2 ratification vote, we hope this is the case. We look forward to mutually moving forward and providing a commitment to excellence to our students. In a year in which teachers took a pay freeze, and looking ahead now to a year in which teachers will receive less than a 1% salary increase, the recent budget cuts have been associated with teachers and their compensation. The cuts this year are unfortunate. Our hope is that we'll find ourselves in a situation like last year at this time, when the budget indicated that the staff needed to be reduced by 15 teachers, but by the start of the school year in August, the district had hired 29 new teachers. We do want to highlight that while teachers do contribute over 9% to their pensions, and teachers pay 25% of their family health care costs, the district pays for all of the health care costs for administration and their families and all of their pensions. Additionally, the district has hired several administrative positions in the district's central office with salaries in excess of $100,000 in the last 6 years. Many of these administrators are compensated at higher levels than their predecessors in the central office. We are puzzled that while we see teachers and student programs cut, the administration seems to grow. Yet, speaking on behalf of the teachers, we are looking to move forward, and we do want to ensure that the board, administration, and all of the teachers here in District 205 are committed to move forward collaboratively and positively, and that indeed, not just the teachers, but administration and the board are committed to excellence. Thank you.
That concludes our public comments for the evening. The next item on our agenda is the reorganization of the Board of Education. In election years, when we have new board members, what we typically do is adjourn the sitting board. We reconvene the new board, we welcome new board members, and then we elect officers. This year, because we are staying the same board, we're going to dispense with that and simply elect new officers. In order to do that, I would like to nominate Maria Hirsch to be our president pro tem to of a president.
Is that okay with the rest of the board? I think last year I might have been credited as being board president. This is just president pro tem. This is just a short term. 5 minutes max. Okay. At this point in time, I would also like to thank Mrs. Deroni and Mr. Collins and I guess myself, the board officers for the last year. We've had 4 new board members that we welcomed to the board to this table last year. I think it's been a great year. I think it's been a learning year. We've all learned a lot. We've spent a lot of time together. We put in place committee structures. We made a lot of changes and improvements over the last year. But at this point in time, it's time to re-up and decide how we move forward. So very simply, at this point in time, I would be open to nominations for the president of the board for the next upcoming school year, or calendar year, or year from where we are now. Mr. Bloom.
I would like to nominate Jim Collins for president of the Board of Education.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate myself.
Okay. Mrs. Deroni. So we have Mr. Collins and Mrs. Deroni. Are there any other nominations for board president? Seeing no more, we'll close nominations. The simplest way to do this is to do a show of hands. So for all of you that would like to vote for Mr. Collins for board president, please raise your hand. Thank you. For all of those that would like to see Mrs. Deroni continue on as president for the next year, please raise your hand. Mr. Collins has a majority of the votes. So for the next year, Mr. Collins, I declare you the board president. Congratulations. My job here is done. At this point in time, it's appropriate for the board to juggle seats a little bit, and then the board president will go ahead with the nominations for the remaining officers.
I would just like to say, we don't have to actually change seats.
Okay.
I would just like to say that I appreciate what a tough decision this is, and that board members do not take this decision lightly. And I want to thank the entire board for their support over the last year. And instead of changing seats, Mr. Collins, the gavel.
5 seconds.
Let me just say also, I'd like to thank Susan for her leadership as president. It's been especially difficult for her breaking in a new superintendent, and I appreciate her patience and understanding, but I felt she did a great job in supporting the new superintendent and helping me to know Elmhurst, and so I'm really very much appreciative of all your support. Thank you.
I would like to thank Susan as well. She's done a great job of breaking in that new superintendent, breaking in a board that it was comprised of 4 brand new people and 2 people that started the year with really just 2 years of experience behind us. Susan, with her 20 years of experience on the school board, provided us with the leadership we needed to make us a smooth, steady transition in a district that was undergoing so much change all at once on the board and the administration. I mean, 3 out of the 4 of our assistant superintendents had not held the job they had the year previously. So thank you very much, Susan, for your leadership. With that, let me, yes, please.
Say one thing. I wanted to thank Susan also for allowing or helping and facilitating our new committee structure and allowing new board members to take more of a leadership role with the committees. I was the chair of the curriculum committee, and I appreciate you allowing me to handle that on my own and develop my leadership skills.
Jim, you and I had talked earlier today, and what I wanted to say is I want to make it clear that my vote was not a no vote, and confidence in Jim, and that I support him fully as a president. It's really a vote that everyone's voice is to be heard and considered, and that's what we as a board last year when we went through our 3 strategy meetings said, and I just really wanted to hold us accountable to accomplishing that board agreement. I believe we're on the path to transforming the way the board governs and strategically looks at education. Our objective is to move District 205 positively forward to create the best educational experience this community can afford and is known for. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and we have all the elements to be greater than we are. And the key is that we have not only the will, but that we have the will, not just the desire, to truly work together, listen to each other, and get us there and achieve the end. This is the only time we had really to determine some continuity with and stability through a lot of changes in this district. And we've experienced those changes recently. With continuity comes the ability to execute the plan we set last year, realize the paradigm shift, how the board wanted to govern, and have intense focus on the good work we've accomplished this past year that has set us up to begin the collaborative work required to create the great positive educational experience this community is known for. And we need to do just that if we expect to lead the district through this transformation that's required based on the perfect storm that's happening for government and education in America. I understand that it may not make sense to everyone, but after being in this position for 1 short year, and most importantly, looking at it from many different, oftentimes divergent perspectives, it's what I believe to be the right decision at this time for this upcoming year. We need to hold ourselves accountable to saying what we want and what we want to do with our employees and for our students. So the board is required to govern itself and govern as we defined in June of 2011, no matter who is president. We all are required to coach and be coachable as well, willing to listen, work together, learn, and continuously improve, just as we expect our employees and our students. The students and the taxpayers deserve it. The president's role is to facilitate board meetings where we hear everyone's perspective, not single-threaded through one person. And I think that we can achieve that. We've made great progress this year. We have worked collaboratively together. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and I think we can do it. We can work as a whole.
Karen, thank you. Well said. This will be a board that will govern by consensus. All voices will be heard. And I think this is a great board. We have individual contributors that as a whole can achieve more than any one of us could on our own. And I look forward to working with the board for the next year. With that said, should we get on to the rest of the officer elections? Do I hear a nomination for vice president?
I would nominate Maria Hirsch.
Do I hear any other nominations for vice president? Hearing none, congratulations, Maria.
I don't have to move.
Yeah, Maria doesn't have to move. That is an upside.
Thank you.
Having,
I think, thank you. I want to thank my fellow board members for their support. I think one of the key things that we had talked about and we are increasingly doing is working together as a team. I think there's been many ideas that we've shared over the last since I've been on board 3 years in terms of the whole board working together. I think the committee structure has allowed all board members to have a more direct say, but I look forward to working with Mr. Collins and the yet-to-be-named player serving as secretary to really work collaboratively and ensure that we reach out and hear everybody's opinion, everybody's concerns, and that we listen to all of our constituents and make sure that we're representing well those competing interests.
thank you, Maria. I'm going to be leaning a lot on Maria and the rest of the board this year to help me perform my role and help make sure that this is the best school board in the history of District 205. Do I hear a nomination for secretary of the board? Mr. McDonough?
I nominate Shannon Ebner for secretary of the board.
Do I hear other nominations? Hearing none? Congratulations, Shannon. You get to move chairs, too.
Thank you, and I too am very excited about our board. We have something very, very good here, and we'll continue that.
Now I have to do something that I'm not used to doing, and that is following the agenda very closely. And again, I lean, please, on Mrs. Deroni to help me through this process of transition of actually running the meeting. As Peggy Ostachek once said, it is a very different meeting from that chair.
And don't you worry.
Thank you. Now, do we need to change chairs now, or can we just continue the meeting from our present chairs? Lovely. All right. Our next item, item E, establishment of a regular Board of Education meeting schedule. We have on board docs a proposed schedule of board meetings for the calendar, or for the year that begins July 1st and ends June 30th, 2013, so for the upcoming school year. Are there any objections to or any discussion about the proposed meeting schedule? Susan, please.
In the past, we've not had the late November meeting. We have scheduled for our written calendar just the one meeting in November. Very often, we have called a special meeting in November when there's been a lot of business going on. But to schedule a meeting that's right after Thanksgiving is very tough on the staff. It's tough on the board. It's following the heels of our school board conference. And I would propose that we take that meeting off the schedule. As I say, we can always call a special meeting. We can add it later if we need to. It's a little more transparent to the public to say we're only going to have one meeting in November, and then if we need to call one, we can. But to set out the expectation that we're going to be meeting that time, I think is a disservice.
Thank you. Now, do we need to change chairs now, or can we just continue the meeting from our present chairs? Lovely. All right. Our next item, item F, establishment of a regular Board of Education meeting schedule. We have on board docs a proposed schedule of board meetings for the year that begins July 1st and ends June 30th, 2013, so for the upcoming school year. Are there any objections to or any discussion about the proposed meeting schedule?
I agree with Mrs. Deroni. I think traditionally we meet in November early, and then we spend 3 days together downtown Chicago, traveling back and forth to attend the school board conference, where we spend time doing professional development in our role as board members. So I think the time commitment that takes, our administrative staff joins us down there as well for sessions. So I think that's a good idea to remove that. The only other question I had was, I believe we have one meeting listed in March. I think I talked to Mrs. Deroni a little bit about this earlier. We typically end up dealing with budget considerations in March. And I know we kind of butt up against spring break, so I'm not sure how that schedule works out. But again, in terms of transparency, I think we end up always needing 2 meetings in March. I'm not sure how we want to handle that, but I'd say take one off in November, add one to March, see if we can fit it in around spring break.
Anyone have an opinion on those 2 changes?
No objection.
No? No one objects? Can someone, Susan, please.
Are you suggesting that we add to the official schedule a meeting in March? If so, which day?
It's up to the will of the board whether we have to add a special meeting like we had to this year to discuss budget issues. It's a season that we are always challenged with having to make budget decisions and informing and making reductions in our teaching staff if it's necessary. I think we're all of the opinion that there's not manna from heaven coming that's going to give us a ton of money to be able to avoid potential cuts for next year. So just anticipating those types of meetings. We can wait and make a modification to the 19th, move it to 2 meetings, or just add a special meeting earlier in March, whatever the board's preference is.
I wonder if Mr. Pernod has an opinion, would like to weigh in on this.
Well, usually in the March period going into April is the time when we're developing budget. And as you remember, this year, we did add a board meeting to that schedule. You could go either way. We can still come back, and if you don't schedule one, if we need a board meeting in March, April timeframe, we can do as we did last year and add a meeting to the schedule. Or you could establish another meeting right now. I know people's calendars are not really firmed up right now. That could be a problem. And I know, looking at the calendar, you're going to have to go back-to-back board meetings at some point in order to do that. So it's at the pleasure of the board.
What is the consent? Go ahead, Mr. Bloom.
Could I propose that in the budget process we talked about kind of an outlook for how we do it next year involving the community, some of the other things that we want to accomplish. I would propose that the Finance Committee be tasked with bringing a calendar to the board shortly with, and I don't know, Chris, how far in advance, but laying out a calendar that, this meeting is one of many that we need to have as part of our process, and just getting the board to agree to it. And if that ends up with an extra meeting, we'll do it at that point in time. Is that acceptable? Chris, does that work?
I'm a little unclear on your proposal. You're proposing that we defer the calendar to the Finance Committee and come back, or?
As far as adding an extra meeting, I think there are multiple meetings as the budget process goes along that we will want to add to our calendar. So let's have the whole, in entirety in front of us, the process and the dates that we need to hit and the meetings that we need to have, and then come back and put that in front of the board and say, is this a schedule that's acceptable to the board? And if so, we need to add a meeting on this date or this date.
Mr. McDonough.
So what you're saying is approve the calendar with Ms. Deroni's change, knowing that we're going to come back with some budget calendar later on and maybe adding a special meeting. It seems to me the most efficient way to handle this.
Mr. Bloom, is that what you had in mind?
Thank you, John, for clarifying that.
Any discussion on that, or how about we put that in the form of a motion?
I move that we accept the board calendar for the year minus the second date in November.
Motion by Mrs. Hirsch, second by Mr. McDonough. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We will approve the calendar as posted, with the exception of the November 27th, 2012 school board meeting. If we need more meetings during budget time, we will add them to the schedule, and the Finance Committee will be coming back with a recommendation for some additional meetings, proposed dates in the future so that people can get them on their calendar in far in advance. So hoping that that is not an omen for the entire year, because approving a calendar involved quite a bit of discussion. Next item on the agenda is Superintendent's communication. Mr. Purnell?
Yes, the first one is Freedom of Information Act requests. Since the last report to the Board of Education, we had 5 of those requests that were received by the district office. 3 were received for commercial purposes and were granted. 1 was received regarding high school sports and was granted. 1 was received regarding school facilities, and that was also granted. So that were the 5 requests since the last board report. The next item is Corporate Benefit Consultants Insurance Renewal Presentation. I would like to turn this over to Mr. Welton and the Corporate Benefit Consultants who are employed by the school district. And in the next board meeting, you will have an agenda item on your agenda to approve the benefits package for our employees for next year. But we wanted to have the report to the board this evening.
We have Ted Reese and Rhonda Sanders here from Corporate Benefit Consultants to talk about the renewal. As you know, we hired corporate benefit consultants this year in the RFP process, and they have been working extremely hard since the day that they started working on our renewal, and it is a favorable one. So we'll turn it over to Ted and Rhonda.
Hi, I'm going to let Rhonda give the presentation, but I'd like to tell you we're very excited working with you and with Chris Welton and his staff. We've already achieved a lot of savings and some good things that Rhonda's going to go through tonight, and we're looking forward to more in the future. And I'm going to take a seat.
I guess we should.
You guys can back me up anytime you want.
I guess we should point out that Corporate Benefits Consultants were the winner of our request for proposal for a new benefit consulting firm for District 205, and this is the first time they've appeared before us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rhonda Sanders, and I am with Corporate Benefit Consultants, and I am one of the consultants working with the district. Just to sort of mirror Ted's comments, our goal as your new consultant is to really help you find ways within your benefit plan to find potential savings without severely compromising the benefits that your employees of the district are used to, because that's so important, especially now with healthcare reform. So with that, I have to use David here a little bit because we have a little snafu. But just a few things we'd like to go over. We'll give you just a short, brief background about our company. We'll talk about the actual 2012-2013 renewal projections. We also would like to share with you some suggestions and considerations that we'd like to present for 2013 and 14, and then beyond that with healthcare reform. And then also just give you a brief little summary of the new benefit website that we have built for your employees of the district. Corporate Benefit Consultants was established in 1996. We're located in Des Plaines. We have 30 full-time staff members, 11 consultants, including 3 of the owners. Ted is one of them. We have 19 support staff. Of that staff, there are approximately 6 to 8 people that are specifically assigned to District 205. So you have a good group of people, including customer advocates that help your employees with their claim issues, work very closely with Chris and Audrey in the benefit department as well. Our agency has approximately 225 clients on a national basis. We represent 100,000 covered employees. So that doesn't include dependents, it's employee base only. Our book of business is split equally, I would say, between self-insured and fully insured, but the premium equivalent of that business equates to about $500 million. We provide consulting services to 30 local school districts in the state of Illinois. We'll give you a brief summary of who some of those clients are. With Blue Cross Blue Shield, we've been what we called a Blue Diamond producer since 2007. What that means is because we're a smaller, mid-sized agency and not a national agency like you would see with the Aons and the Hewitts, that's a very prestigious ranking for us because of the fact that we are a smaller local agency. We're also a member of the United Benefit Advisors, which is the nation's largest privately held employee benefit association, and what that gives us is the opportunity to provide services, technology, and information to our clients that we normally would not have on a standalone basis. Okay, David, thank you. Some of our clients, school clients that we represent that are over 500 employee lives are District 214 in Arlington Heights, District 211 in Palatine, Community Consolidated School District 181 in Hinsdale, District 219 in Niles, Joliet Junior College, Maine Township High School District 207, Joliet Township High School District in Joliet, and we have a couple of districts in Community High School District 117, and then Glenview Public Schools 34, which is an elementary. But this is just a partial listing of some of our larger school districts, similar in size to Elmhurst. So the real important thing that we started working with Chris and his team was the renewal for 2012. Making a transition from consultants in the middle of negotiating your renewal and working on that was a little, tough for Chris and his staff, but we were able to get through it pretty well. The good news is that there will be no increase to your PPO premiums for the 2012-2013 plan year. The projected annual cost are $8.105 million. And when we refer to cost, we refer to a combination of your fixed cost and your projected claims. So that number could vary depending on your claims under the PPO plan because you are self-funded. But for budget purposes, we like to give you a number to at least budget and at least prepare from a premium equivalent perspective from. When we look at the fixed cost, your fixed costs represent approximately 9% of that total projection, which is $725,000. And within those components, we look at your administrative fee, we look at your prescription drug rebates, we look at your individual stop loss, which is your reinsurance coverage, and the district is responsible for the first $150,000 per person covered under your plan. After that, you pay for coverage that protects you, whereas Blue Cross Blue Shield would pick up that expense. And your aggregate stop loss, which is your umbrella stop loss that covers every claim that's under that specific stop loss of $150,000. So the fixed costs from the initial renewal were actually reduced approximately 10%. And how we were able to negotiate that and the areas of reduction were in the reinsurance cost. As a self-funded client with Blue Cross, we can go out to other outside markets and market that reinsurance coverage and take that from Blue Cross. So after we did a complete market analysis of that, we found that there were 4 other carriers that were extremely competitive, and Blue Cross Blue Shield agreed to reduce their initial increase on that aggregate coverage from 7.2% to 2%. Which was about a $22,000 savings. And also on the aggregate, you're currently paying about $60,000 a year for that coverage. And our analysis over a 5-year period showed that you were never even close to hitting that aggregate projection that was set by Blue Cross Blue Shield. So as a result, that aggregate coverage will be eliminated in 2012, saving you an additional $60,000. The nice thing with this renewal for the PPO is that with no increase to your premiums in 2012, the district costs are projected to fall well below the Blue Cross's trends. Blue Cross trends today are probably the lowest we've seen in many, many years, where we're looking at the PPO medical trend at 6.7%. The RX trend is running about 6.3, and the HMO is running at 7.2. So by not increasing any PPO rates this year, it's certainly a good story to say that your numbers are coming in below trend, which is a great, great story, especially in today's environment. The trends that we're showing, that's okay, you can stay where you're at. The trends that we're showing were actual trends that Blue Cross Blue Shield used for the purposes of your renewal for 2012. Okay? You can go to the next one, thank you. The next chart really just shows what the current, what we call premium equivalent rates are. This is the rate that is combined of both the district's portion and the employee's portion. Okay? And so you can see in the first column the rates that are broken out by your separate tiers and the proposed rates for the next year. There's a slight difference only in the fact that the Medicare single rate went up slightly, and it's important to note that your Medicare retirees pay 100% of that premium. So it's really not a district expense. And for both PPO plans, those rates will stay the same in the 2012 plan year. Okay? Go ahead, David, next screen, please. Thank you. On the dental cost, again, no increase to the cost. The projected claims and administrative fees are around $737,000, pretty similar to what they are today. We did notice, however, in the analysis that we needed to make an adjustment to reflect a more accurate differential between your single rate and your dependent rate, because it seemed to be that there was a little bit more to the single cost than to the dependent or family rate. So in that case, the premium amount is the same based on the exposures, but your single people will pay a little bit less towards that contribution. So those rates are reflected for that. The HMO was a little bit more of an issue for us this year because we actually had 3 options to look at for your HMO Illinois and your Blue Advantage HMO. The first option with the renewal was to make absolutely no changes whatsoever. No plan changes, everything stays the same, and that would result in a 4.3% increase, which would equate to approximately $113,000 more in premium that you would have to pay to Blue Cross Blue Shield. The second option was, and options that we worked with the committee on, is looking at what would the renewal look like if we made plan changes to the current HMO. How would that impact the rates or the renewal? And the proposed plan changes that we had proposed to the committee decreased that renewal from 4.3% to 2.6%, which was about a $45,000 savings overall. So your annual premium would have been about 2.693 compared to 2.738. The last option was keeping the HMO the exact same plans that you have today, but looking at the funding arrangement. Today, you're fully insured, which basically means you pay a premium to Blue Cross Blue Shield every month, regardless of what your actual costs are. So we look at, can we change that funding to make it self-funded, very similar to what you have with your PPO plan today, which basically means you pay the actual cost instead of paying premium that is projected. And from our analysis, we recommended that you go that way in 2012 and you change your funding arrangement. No plan changes to the plans. Your employees see the same benefits, and we just change the funding arrangement. So basically, all that means to your members or your employees is that they'll have to get new ID cards before July 1st because they will get a new HMO group number. From a perspective of that, you're going to stay exactly the same cost that you would if you were under a fully insured plan today, no changes. So that is our recommendation for the 2012 plan year on the HMO. Seamless to the employees with the exception of the new ID cards. Okay? Go ahead, thank you. I talked a little bit about the self-funding. It's very important to understand that with your HMO, Blue Cross Blue Shield allows you to self-fund the HMO, but they refer to it as a cost-plus contract. Under your PPO, they refer to it as administrative services only, or ASO. The biggest difference with the Cost Plus is that it's a self-funded arrangement, but it's insured. So basically, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they assume the legal and fiduciary liability under that plan. Under your PPO, the district retains that liability. And under the HMO Cost Plus, that HMO plan continues to be governed by state mandates within the state of Illinois. Whereas with your PPO plan, you have the objective to either follow state plans or not. You're not mandated to follow those laws. Some of the advantages between the two are under a cost plus arrangement, like your PPO, you gain cash flow opportunity by holding any reserve money. If you're paying premium of $20,000 a month, but your costs were actually $10,000 a month, you hold that money, you don't pay it to Blue Cross. So you have that cash flow advantage. You pay your claims and your fixed costs on an actual basis rather than on a projected basis. You have reduced administrative cost. There's no margin that you usually see margin built into the fully insured premium, and you also have the same stop loss protection under an HMO plan like you do with the PPO. So you have that reinsurance liability where you're protected over a certain dollar amount. Some of the plan changes that we reviewed with committee was looking at changing some of your office visits, some of your co-pays for outpatient surgery, increasing your inpatient hospital deductibles, and also changing your mail order prescription from 2 times retail from 1 times to 2 times. So in looking at those changes, I think the goal was with the committee is changes impact obviously those that use the plan, whereas if we could change and save money by not making any changes and keep everything the same and change the funding arrangement, everybody gains from that perspective. So these are just some of the examples of the plan changes that we proposed to the HMO plans. Here are the premium equivalent comparison rates for the HMO plan. Again, no change in cost. These costs represent both the district and the employee portion. And you can see that with the premium the same, everything stays the same from a projection perspective at $2.6 million. The other lines of coverage that we looked at was your group term life, accidental death and disability, and your supplemental life benefit. We went and did a full market analysis, or RFP, if you will. We contacted and sent this out to 11 different carriers, all of which provided proposals. We were very pleased. The market results were extremely competitive, and we have carriers that are A+ rated that came in approximately 50% lower than your current cost. The estimated total savings to the district over a 3-year period is approximately $80,000. And any change to a new carrier is guaranteed the same coverage that you currently have to your members. It's very seamless to the employee. The coverage stays the same, and there's nothing for your employees to have to do. So that's what we're looking at for the life and AD&D coverage. We're also very excited and to say that we also offered as part of our services to build and maintain a full-blown employee benefit website for all of your employees and their members, which is available 24/7. We have it up and running. It will be available for your members to use as part of open enrollment. This benefit website is specific to Elmhurst. It has your branding all over it. So when your members contact and go on that site, they feel that it's something that you as a district are offering. It offers them all of their benefit booklets, all of their claim forms, links to the different networks and providers that you give them access to. It's also used for any benefit changes or announcements, and also all of the required notices as a district that you are required to give to your employees are listed on that benefit website as well, with regards to HIPAA and any new healthcare reform notices that you may be required to provide. So that's available to your employees as well. Moving forward, it's a lot to take in because between now and the next election will be a big, question mark, and then after election, what happens to healthcare reform and how do you as a district react to that? One of the things that we want to do in the next year is do a complete market analysis for your prescription drug plan. Like the reinsurance program, we can carve that out of Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's also very important under a self-funded plan to market your prescription drug. That's changing constantly with contracts and things of that nature. So we will do that over the next year. We also want to look at modifying or changing your PPO2 plan from the current structure to more of a consumer-driven health plan, with either offering a health reimbursement account or a health savings account, which is becoming more and more popular. Particularly if you're hiring young, teachers and young staff, a lot of people like to see that you're offering some sort of health savings account with a high deductible. We're also meeting with your current wellness provider to restructure the pricing that they're offering you for your next wellness program in 2013. And then more importantly, throughout the next year, working with your insurance committees to make sure we provide them with educational sessions on understanding and giving them enough information about consumer-driven health plan options, benefits, and more importantly, what is coming up with healthcare reform pending November elections. So that's real important to us as well. So I think, David, that's our last. Yes. So if there's any questions or.
Mrs. Tironi?
I have a couple of questions. Your slide 11.
Slide 11, okay.
Where you talk about
yes,
proposed plan change options, are those going to happen or not?
No. Our recommended renewal was for the HMO was to keep everything the same, no plan changes, but to change the
cost
funding.
plus.
Correct.
What are the disadvantages of going to that cost plus plan?
The biggest disadvantage would be if for some reason your claims skyrocketed under the HMO above and beyond what the claim projections were, very similar to what we have with your PPO today. You have to fund those claims up to a certain level, and then it could be above and beyond your projections, or the projections that we have. You have that today in place with your PPO. So that's really the worst case scenario. And with your HMO, you have to keep in mind that you have capitations that are paid to the providers, whether your members seek those services or not from the doctors. All you're really paying are your hospital claims. Your physician claims are paid on a capitated basis every month, and then your prescription drug claims. So really you would have to have really high hospital claims that were unexpected, that went above and beyond the stop loss, individual stop loss that you have similar to your PPO plan. There's really no differential between the two plans as far as how you fund them.
You had mentioned in an earlier slide that the retirees pay their own premiums, so there's no cost difference to us.
Right. There was a slight increase in the Medicare single rate, and you have a group of grandfathered retirees that pay that rate. They pay 100% of that cost. So in that slide, there was a very slight increase in the premium, 0.2%, I believe, forward. Yeah. And that just meant that that's because those 17 people are going to pay a little bit higher premium, and that's in that calculation. But the district does not pay the cost of that insurance. They pay the full premium of $365
But we
a
share
month.
in the claims, just like we do with other
You share in the
employees.
claims, but this cost is rated to hopefully cover the entire claim cost, whereas the rate that you have currently, the district is definitely subsidizing a portion of that. We won't know if this rate will cover the full amount until we look at next year's claims. In other words, that single premium that you have today, if we look at the retirees' experience, the premium that they pay was less than what the actual claims were that were paid out for those retirees. So that premium was adjusted to reflect more of an accurate number to cover the full cost of the retiree experience.
And this is a question for the administration. Are the projected costs of this plan, which have now dropped a bit, in line with our budget? I mean, were the projected ones in the budget? Are we still okay on the budget when it comes to our insurance premiums?
This is with a 0% is slightly less than we projected. I think we adjusted it in the last projection to a 0%.
So we have no found money, in other words, from this time?
Not at this time.
Well, some of the found fixed cost savings you'll see will be in the reinsurance cost and things of that nature. So we'll really get to see the true savings, if you will, at the end of the next year when we see where your actual claims come in on the HMO plan compared to what you would have paid in premium cost.
But there's a higher risk.
There is a higher risk than what you have today, but based on the analysis, over the last 3 years, you would have been ahead of the game by going to cost plus rather than staying fully insured. So over the last 3 years, you lost a little bit of money in that respect by staying under a fully insured arrangement. We looked back at 2009, 2010, and projected 2011 on the HMO.
Is that typical, just to go back 3 years?
Generally, yes, on a group of your size. I mean, you could look back long-term, but like any self-funded plan, you know, you go through your cycles where you have good years and bad years. So, yes, it is typical to look back at least a 3 to 4 year period.
It's just that we've been through bad years with the insurance.
Right, and you know, very similar to the...
I'm just concerned that I don't want to go there again.
Well, very similar to the PPO. The funding arrangement is no different. We help you set premium equivalent so that you know what those rates are, so that you fund every month, just like you do with the PPO. The difference is that at the end of the month or at the end of the year, if the claim projection is less than what you've actually budgeted, you are now holding that money versus paying that money to Blue Cross and never getting it back, just like the PPO. And it's important to note that we keep stop loss numbers in there as well, so you have a protection. I believe with the HMO, it's at $80,000 on the pooling level, Ted. Is that correct? I think it's $80,000. So like your PPO, you're at $150,000. On the HMO, the district is liable for the first $80,000, so it's a lower number for every individual. Then Blue Cross reimburses you for everything above those claims.
One thing I'd like to add is that when you're self-funded, you're always going to have bad years. They come we see it constantly. Every 3, 5 years, 4 or 5 years, you're going to have that bad year. So you got to live with it. But the nice thing about self-funding is that once that bad year is over with, you don't get this huge premium increase from the insurance company, and your claims go back down the next year.
Right.
So that's the beauty of self-funding, and that was one of the reasons. That's what we looked at. We looked back 3 years plus the current year to make sure that it was a wise decision to do the HMO change.
Right.
To make that recommendation.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, please, Maria.
We've got 4 basic plans, 2 PPOs and 2 HMOs. And years ago, and if we look, actually the slide that's up right now kind of demonstrates the point. PPO number 2 has, I think, 18 employees in it. I read that as it's not a very attractive plan to our employees, or it's priced, looks like it's priced lower, but I don't have the details in front of me in terms of what the plan offerings are. And I know several years ago, we had looked at trying to kind of restructure and provide some different offerings. So I think on your ending slide, you had talked about revisiting, I think, that second PPO plan and coming up with something. Can you just share, and maybe Chris, from the insurance committee's standpoint and the view of the members, the employees that sit on the insurance committee, how they reacted to that? I think from an employer standpoint, I would like to see a lot of flexibility and trying to structure offerings so that wherever you are in your life,
if I'm 25, okay, and my expected needs are very low, that there is a cost-effective plan for me if I'm in my 40s or if I'm in my 60s. I'd like to make sure that we have, offerings for all of our employees. So Chris, maybe you could share kind of the insurance committee's reaction to that kind of an approach of restructuring?
Well, I'll have to, I'm trying to gauge a group of staff members that when we have our insurance committee meetings, but I feel like they're open to the idea of listening and learning about a consumer-driven health plan with an HRA or an HSA this year. And I know that they are open to the idea. They're gonna make it thoughtful and listen to the presentations by CBC all year long. And the concept would be to have a plan that would attract more than the current 18 staff members. But that plan would be a lower cost premium for someone that isn't a heavy user of insurance. That would be the type of employee that would be attracted to a consumer-driven health plan. Whether our numbers are up, I don't know. I think usually when you implement a consumer-driven health plan, it takes several years to really get going where people figure out that this could be a savings for them. So I wouldn't expect a huge, if we did implement it, I wouldn't expect a huge number of employees flocking to that plan right away, but maybe something that builds momentum over time.
I think if it's well-designed and well-communicated, it's going to be hopefully self-apparent.
It is,
people
and
can
the
self-select.
key to that really is the communication and education. We have larger school districts that offer it today, and it took them about 4 years to start seeing that population migrate from the regular PPO plan to the HSA plan. And a lot of it is understanding what it means to you out of pocket, particularly if you have a young family, and also if it is an HSA plan, understanding that it's pre-tax dollars, that it's savings to them at the end of the day, and that money can go with them should they choose to leave the district. So it is an educational process, and I think a lot of people wait till maybe a handful of their friends try it, and then every year you do a little bit more communication. So right now, when we first took over your account, the first question we had was, what happened? What was the PPO2? And I think there's such a small differential in the pricing that from a contribution perspective, there's no incentive to move into that plan. Maybe a little bit of a higher deductible. I may want to just stay where I'm at. So those type of things we'll look at and show the committee to say, here's what it means, and here's some examples from your out-of-pocket perspective.
I don't mean to prescribe what kind of insurance plans. I'm not an insurance expert. I just, from a culture perspective and an employer perspective, I think offering and recognizing that we have different types of customers, insurance customers in the district, and if we can structure the plan so that there's something that's attractive and beneficial to all of our employees, that's my goal.
These consumer-driven health plans started, 6 years ago?
About 6-7 years ago.
And they're just starting.
Oh, Ted, hold on.
Excuse me, Ted?
Ted, you need
would
to
you
be on the
mind coming up to the microphone so that everyone can hear you? Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
These plans are just now starting to catch the wave, and all of the school districts that we represent are requesting plans like this. And to be very honest with you, the participation is very low, as Chris said. I mean, I wouldn't expect a big run into it, but a couple years from now, you got union contracts coming up, negotiating new things, and people are going to start doing this. And I'm working with 3 or 4 big school districts right now where they're negotiating with the unions right now to put these plans in. And a lot of it has to do with the the employee contributions, and those are going to have to change to make these effective, these plans. But this is starting now. It's a wave that's been coming for a number of years, and I think 3 or 4 years from now, it's going to be a whole different story, especially with the healthcare reform. Right.
And anyone else? You're not quite off the hook.
Oh, okay.
I have a few questions as well.
He's off the hook, but I'm not.
Oh, you're both still on the hook. The talk of stop-loss protection and moving from Blue Cross insured to self-insured, of course, makes me a little nervous. So I just want to make sure I have the understanding correct. In the PPO plan, the district is responsible for the first $150,000 of claims for every employee, and those can add up to 150,000 times however many people we have in the PPO, right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And for the HMO, likewise, but $80,000 a person.
That's correct.
How much, and I realize I didn't ask this in advance, so if you need to go back to your offices and calculate and get back to us, I understand. I would like to see a recommended amount that we hold in reserve that will get us through those tough years without the district having to go into deficit spending. We budget for a balanced budget down to the last $150 every year.
Mm-hmm.
So $150,000 to us is a lot of money on May 31st.
Absolutely. And one of the analysis that we did in looking at that is looking at how many claims you actually had over the last 4 to 5 years that either exceeded the 150 or was even close to 50% of that. And then we show you different areas, because some of the things that Blue Cross may recommend is going to a higher level based on your size. But if you're not comfortable doing that because of the risk and willing to pay a little bit more premium, then we keep you at the lower level. So we did that analysis with Chris. We can certainly come back with a reserve number that we would project for you on the PPO and on the HMO. And keep in mind that when Blue Cross looks at their renewal, that reinsurance portion, if you recall in one of my slides here, we said that they wanted a 7% increase on that premium, and we were able to get them down to a 2%. So it impacts your overall cost, but it's a very small portion of your overall cost.
Okay.
I can give you let me look at your sheets around. The projected costs are $7.9 million, correct?
On the PPO one.
On the PPO, and 9% of that is fixed costs. So you're looking at what, $7 million in claims?
Mm-hmm.
Several school districts have asked us the exact same question. What is our liability out there?
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that in this geographic area, it's about 10% of your paid claims. So I don't know exactly what your reserve is right now. Chris and I have had discussions about it, but that was a few weeks ago. But your liability, if this Healthcare Reform Act gets to a point where you're going to end everything and your people are going to go into exchanges and all this, your liability is about $700,000 right now on your plan. And I believe that you have a lot more than that in your reserve.
We do.
I don't know exactly what it is, but one of the discussions was, are you well reserved? And I know that Chris and we had this conversation several times, and we had our actuaries look at the numbers so that they made good that the projections were sound, and about $700,000 is it. Okay. And what we do is, if you want, and we can get this for Chris, but we have to order it from Blue Cross. We send it to Blue Cross's actuaries, and they'll give us an exact actuarial pinpoint. The last one I did was 9.8%. That was for Maine Township High School.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that ballpark.
And it's the very same thing with the HMO.
Okay, and I'll leave that to between you and Chris
Okay.
about any calculations, and I'm sure Chris will be bringing that to the Finance Committee.
Okay.
The other question I hear a lot about, in fact, while we were through the interview process, one of your competitors came and showed us what our tax liability, in their opinion, would look like under the Cadillac health plan test, and my understanding is we have a health plan that will qualify in 2018 as a Cadillac healthcare plan. I'm just wondering, I guess I have two questions. I guess the first of which is how does first, I guess, what do you think our projected liability, if our district looked exactly the same as it does this year with the exact same plans, the exact same number of enrollees, do you have any kind of estimate, or can you get back to us with an estimate of what would our Cadillac health plan tax liability be to the federal government? How much money would that be?
Okay, sure. First off, just to give a brief explanation, the Cadillac tax comes into play 2018. And for purposes of your projections, what we did was we took your current rates today on the PPO1 plan. We projected 5% increases every year, which we think are pretty reasonable based on your history. And from that projection, we found that your family tier will hit the government threshold in 2017, which means in 2018, all you're going to pay the tax on is the family premium, okay? And that will come, assuming the same family count for your PPO1, it's about $154,000 in 2018. In 2019, it will hit both your single and your family. Remember, you have 3 tiers. So we're talking employee and employee plus 2. That number will be about $319,000 in 2019, excuse me. 2020 is going to be $510,000. So from 2018 to 2020, you're looking at close to $1 million in that 3-year period.
Okay.
Okay, that's just on your PPO1.
And that's just on the PPO, not the
PPO1.
just one of our 4 plans.
PPO1, correct.
Okay.
And so that's assuming everything stays the same and you average 5% increases between now and 2018. Now, you could do projections of 10%, 15% increases, and that number will increase, obviously, in 2018. And the thresholds may change between now and then. So that's just a very rough estimate based on your rates today.
Okay. And then my second question is, conceptually, what does a health care package that is not subject to the Cadillac health care tax versus our present offerings to our employees today? What is the difference between those 2 plans?
Well, the statistics today say 1 out of every 8 plans by 2018 will be subject to the Cadillac tax. And your Cadillac tax is based on plans that provide lower plan deductibles, anywhere between $100 and $400, lower plan out-of-pocket expenses, and where the plan generally pays 100% of most expenses in network. It also takes into consideration the age and demographics of your group. So if you have an older group with lower plan deductibles and lower out-of-pockets, more than likely your premiums will increase. So what we look at is how do we change that and how do we mitigate you getting to that threshold sooner than you need to? And in most cases with school districts and municipalities, we find that there are very generous benefits. So the only way to really change that is to increase benefits, increase deductibles, increased out-of-pocket expenses, offer other plans to give incentives to go into a plan that has a higher deductible. So employers will be imposed to pay that tax, but we know that employers, most of them, will pass that back on to the member, whether it's in a way of contribution or for self-funded plans in the way of a surcharge, because it's a big number. And for many employers, you know, that's an additional expense that if you want to continue to offer those type of benefits, everyone pays. So the only way to really exclude yourself, you won't ever exclude yourself, but you can stop the increase of how quickly you get to that threshold number by plan changes, contribution changes, things of that nature.
Okay. And you
one
work
of the
with
things
us.
we don't know, too, is with all the increase in benefits that are going on for healthcare reform that you didn't have before. And now they're going to drive your costs way up with all of these increase in benefits, so now they're going to tax you on them. It's kind of
It's hard.
it's tough to deal with it. So we're waiting for the Supreme Court to make their ruling and see what changes they make.
Okay.
It's going to be a big thing.
All right, well, are there any other questions I should ask? Mr. Bloom?
I got one more just to follow up on. I mean, you said the reserve is 700,000. You said every 3 to 5 years you have a bad year. I mean, along with that reserve calculation, could you let us know maybe the last 3 kind of bad years that we had and how bad it looked?
I think, do you have that with you?
I might have that with me. Hold on. On the PPO, I think it was about 4 years ago, where you had more than your normal claims over the 150,000. On the HMO, for the last 2 years, including the current year, you did have some claims that were over the pooling level, which we took into consideration when looking at changing the funding arrangement. So a group of your size, they typically say 4 to 5 years, where you may see a bad year and then you're going to come back down. So it's been about average. A group of your size, we typically see about 2 claims over the specific on the PPO for a group of your size.
So I mean, I'm just trying to get it actual. So, I mean, if you go back and pick those bad years, is it, so 2 claims above, 2 claims to the stop loss level? So you're saying that that's $300,000 in the one plan was our exposure in that year? And have we had exposure, and then how much of that was in excess of the premiums collected that year? I mean, my understanding in talking to Chris before we even kind of went down this process, just philosophically when we talked through self-insured, that our risks were in the 6-figure range. I mean, they weren't millions of dollars. I think to your point about 700,000 being the reserve that when
that's a run-out reserve that if you ended your plan.
Okay.
Right.
That's if you ended your plan. If you said, we're going into the exchange in 2014, we're going to end the Elmhurst School District plan, everybody's going into the new federal exchange, you would have to pay approximately $700,000 on the run-out.
On the tail.
On the tail of the old claims.
I would be interested on top of that, though, the reserve that I think we need to keep for the bad years. So, we're building up.
That's a comfort level.
Yeah.
So you have to keep $700,000.
Yeah, so take that, put that over here. Let's look at actual, I just want to know the claims in excess of premium, the payouts in excess of premiums in a bad year. Is that 300,000?
Well, I can tell you this, I have this figure. For 2010 plan year. Okay, you had 2 claims on the PPO that were over the 150.
Okay.
The total claim amount for those 2 claims in excess was $290,000. That was above and beyond the 150 for those 2 claims. And you paid premium of $396,000 for that coverage. So
they made money.
They made money in that year.
Right, but I'm just trying to, put that all together, and in that pool, we collected X dollars of premium, and we had X dollars of claim. Yeah, that year you saw a flip. How bad? What was the deficit?
In the years that we looked at back, I think we went back 4 years.
4 years. Right.
You were never really in jeopardy of ever hitting something catastrophic where you might have 6 claims that reached the $150,000 stop loss. I think you've been averaging like 2 or 3.
Have we had a deficit year yet? When what you looked at it, we have a deficit year where we didn't collect enough in premiums to cover the costs we paid out, plus the insurance premiums.
No.
Okay. And to Susan's point,
No.
I mean, I don't know if that data is there, how easy it is. I would feel more comfortable if we went back 10 years. Or, I mean, you said I'd love to have a few cycles here where we've got a couple of bad years thrown in there. How hard is that?
Well, I think Blue Cross will go back, like 5 years. Maybe.
5 years, yeah. 10 years is a big number because your demographics change, your enrollment changes.
I mean, I understand. I'm really looking for a very simple analysis. Is give me the years where we were underfunded and tell me how bad that was.
Okay.
And so we're looking at what is our risk if we're wrong.
Okay.
Is it $300,000 in any given year, or is it $1 million? I mean, we're trying to size the risk that we have, and then we'll have a reserve against that, and that'll help with our comfort level. We'll say, you know what, in your worst year, you guys didn't end up upside down, or you ended up upside down by $250,000. So as long as you get $1 million in the bank,
Sure.
as a reserve.
We can look at that and get that back to Chris.
Okay, that would be
Certainly.
helpful. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. That was the actual question I had. You just did a good job of putting it into insurance speak. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Chris Welton and the work that his committee did in putting a request for proposal out to several firms, and the process that he put forth to select a firm. And from your presentation tonight, Mr. Welton's committee made a very good choice. Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. Same here.
The next item under Superintendent's communication is student fees, and we want to present again tonight as a preview of a vote that will be requested on the May 8th meeting, a proposal for student fees going into the 2012-2013 school year. So Chris Welton has worked with the administrative team, has worked with board members. We have discussed this as an administrative team for about a month now, and I think that we have a reasonable proposal to move forward that really tries to save some dollars for parents on the fee structure that, as compared to this year's fee structure going into the 12-13 school year. So with that, Chris will do a brief overview of our recommendation. Again, that will be coming May 8th.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the student fee issue because I knew that last year when the increases occurred last year that we received some negative feedback, so we put a lot of effort into really thinking about our fee structure. And so the first thing I want to talk about is the registration fees by grade level. As you can see here, each grade level is seeing a decrease in the fees. The pre-K is going down from $88 to $75. The kindergarten down $13. The first through fifth grade down $4, and the sixth through eighth down $3. As far as the other fees, we spent a lot of time looking at the activity bus fees. And so in the K through 8, we looked at how many buses were offered after school at the middle school level. And we have 4 buses currently at the middle school level, 1 at Bryan and 1 at Sandburg and 2 at Churchville. At Churchville, they average about 40 students per day on those buses. So we decided that we would look at eliminating 1 bus at Churchville to offset the cost of eliminating the fees for the activity bus. And this was or actually a positive financial, slightly positive for the district. So but the good news is it would eliminate the activity bus fees for next year. Also, as far as the waiving of fees for students receiving financial assistance, we have decided to move instrumental music and vocal music. Those fees will be waived if the students meet that criteria for financial assistance. And the thinking on that was that those programs are core curricular programs where at least a portion, it's a co-curricular, meaning during the class day and after school. So those are the major changes or the only changes that we are proposing for the 12-13 fees for K through 8. So next, I will briefly talk about the fees related to York High School. Currently we have an activity fee, a $10 activity fee that's charged to all students that gets students into all home athletic games and the TOSH tournaments, does not include the IHSA tournaments, and 2 theater productions excluding the musical. And then we also had a $10 per club or activity fee. So we're proposing that we combine those 2 fees to a $20 fee for all students, which will allow them to get into the home athletic games and the TOSH tournament and the 2 theater productions, and they can participate in as many clubs or activities as they wish. This $20 fee covers both of those things. And the $20 fee will be eligible for being waived for students receiving financial assistance. The other change here is we are proposing to increase the fee for driver's education from $156 to $245. And that $245 is to cover the net cost of driving, 100% of the net cost of the driving portion, or also known as behind the wheel. So there's $129 of net cost related to that portion, and 50% of the classroom portion. And then we currently have 4 activity buses, late run activity buses. We are going to eliminate one of those late run activity buses, and that will offset the fees. And so we will eliminate the fees for activity buses. And like in pre-K through 8, we will have the music, the vocal music and the instrumental music fees waived for students receiving financial assistance. So those are the major, or the changes to the fee structure for next year.
Any questions for Mr. Welton? Maria?
Thanks, Chris. I think I know you guys spent some time talking about fees in committee, and I know that your team has been working on it. This has been kind of an ongoing discussion. Finding the balance between what offerings we can offer for free as part of our public education and what things we need to charge for. A couple of questions that are specific. When we looked at the elementary fees, it used to be, and I don't know that this is still the case, but the rationale behind setting the fees where they were for K through 8 was that the fee was determined by 1/6 of the cost of the textbooks plus the consumables. I don't know if you had heard that ever before, but that's traditionally how we've come up with those fees. And I don't know if that fee structure that you showed us where we're reducing fees, which I'm happy about being able to reduce fees, just want to make sure that we're covering our costs for materials. Is that still true?
Yes, that is the formula we used, and we didn't change that at all in making these calculations.
Okay. I'm anticipating looking forward 4 or 5 years when all of our kids are going to be using iPads, and we're not going to be expecting to charge them fees for textbooks because they're going to be using them electronically using a $15 book. So if we add up the $170 over a couple of years, you're going to be at the point where we've paid for the device. So it's just something that I want to make sure that we're cognizant of the structure and how we determine these fees, and as we make a transition in several years to maybe a different platform, that's something that we're looking at and thinking about. I'm really thrilled to see that our performing arts instruction, the vocal music and instrumental music, are being considered for fee waivers for those students. I've always believed that those were academic courses. We take attendance, we give them grades. There's significant investments in time that they actually contribute to those classes, so I'm very happy to see that those have been added. And the other thing that I wanted to ask, last year when these fees were brought about, the board had asked that we attempt to track the effect of these fees, particularly in athletics. We talked about activity buses. We talked about charging for orchestra and vocal music at the high school. We had charged for those 4th through 8th grade, but we had never charged before at the high school. And I'm wondering if we have any good data on what happened to participation levels through, for the athletics program, as well as a couple of the programs where the fees were significantly raised. Do you have any information you can share with us on?
I did gather all that information. I haven't quite got it into a format ready for the board, but I could definitely get that ready. We've gathered all the information from the principals, so I have it. It's just a matter of getting it all together.
Okay, I think that would be very helpful for us to keep things in perspective and understand the implications of the fee decisions that we're making. The other thing that we had talked about when we talked about the athletic fees and the 4 tiers that we had for athletics, we had talked about challenging the athletic department to see if there were ways. I believe that the rationale behind those fees were determined based on, I think it was 20% of the cost of offering that particular sport. And we had some data from the athletic director that gave us the expenses for each of the sports, and we came up with a formula and came up with those fees. And I'm very interested to see if we've been able to do any cost containment and possibly reduce some of those athletic fees for our student athletes.
I haven't received any information from the athletic director in regards to that initiative at this time, but I could try and gather something for you.
I would remind the board that that we recommended as part of the budget cuts that the athletic costs would be reduced through the elimination of assistant coaches. And we have decided, I believe, as part of our budget reduction to capture that to offset our budget reduction fees. So, that was something they were contemplating either way. So we have captured that and taken that fee. We can certainly go back to the administration and see if there's other areas so they can reduce. But, in fairness to the athletic department, they have taken a significant chunk out of their budget with that budget reduction.
I will say I happen to have a child that plays lacrosse, and the fees for lacrosse were outside of this structure. And we were $485 for lacrosse last school year, and this spring we're down to $285. So somehow they were able to find some significant savings. And if that's something that, and I can't begin to explain how exactly that happened, but if there are opportunities for us to reduce the cost to our families for kids participating in sports, I totally acknowledge, Mr. Purnell, that we've had to, cut back on coaches and cut back on stipends. But I do think that the board sat here and said if we had to increase these athletic fees, we really wanted to challenge the administration at the high school to get every last nickel out of those programs that we possibly could to help with our families.
Any other questions? Mrs. Durrani?
Do we have any idea what the projected influence on our budget is going to be from this, what seems to be a reduction, mostly a reduction in fees? We've raised the driver's ed, we were going to have an admission activity fee. I'm looking at York now. Many of the grade school ones elementary school are based on cost, but do we have any idea what the net effect on our budget is going to be? I'm presuming we're going to bring in less in fees. or projected to bring in less. I mean, we never know what we're going to get because a lot of them are based on usage.
That's correct. So it would be difficult to estimate at this time. We tried to look at, in talking about the high school, the activity fee and club fee, we think that'll project to a increase in revenue slightly. The driver education fee will result in an increase in revenue. I haven't quantified that number. I could do that. The activity bus fee decrease is going to decrease our revenues, but we are also going to decrease our expenditures by eliminating the late activity bus, the waiving of the fees for music and vocal will be a decrease in revenues by the low-income students participating in those activities. But I haven't quantified that whole thing, all of this out. But I think it'll come out close to a break even on the New York fees.
The only additional fee, Chris did do a calculation, and it's hard to calculate, but we're trying to calculate based on the waiver now for instrumental music and choir for those students, what that cost could be. That's tough to calculate because we don't know exactly how many eligible students would be taking those classes. But a worst-case scenario, I believe, Chris, the number was 17,000.
Yeah, I have it here. We collected about 194,000 for music fees this year. We estimated the percentage of fee waiver students at 7.59%, and that came out to 14,710.
14,000. So that would probably be a worst-case scenario for the waiver of students with high needs that we are allowing to take with waiving those fees.
And do I understand that the activity bus fee, the decrease in that is going to be neutral?
Yes, it'll be a break-even proposition.
Good.
We believe most of this, except for the fee waiver, is probably a break-even proposition for the most part. Now, we're not going to know until we actually get into this and see how many students are participating next year. But right now, based on the numbers we had from this year, we believe we're pretty close to break-even, except, again, for the fee waiver.
Stufen.
Thank you. Chris, I apologize, I didn't get my questions to you ahead of time. But I know that Ms. Hirsch had indicated a little bit of what the rationale was for our fees. You know, is it based on cost of running the business, you know, rental fees and all those sorts of things? So she covered a lot of that. Just wanted to make sure that that was articulated. And the question to you is there anything else that we should make known from the rationale on the fees? I mean, how we look at the cost.
Similar to what we said at the grade school level, the K through 8, it's consumables and 1/6 of the textbooks at the grade school. A lot of the course fees at the high school are about paying for consumable goods in the classroom. For example, you know, the foods class, they cook food. So the course fee of $25 for that is supposed to offset the food costs, similar to like a woods class would be the course fee is to offset the woods and things used in the class. A lot of those course fees are offsetting consumable goods used in the classroom.
Okay.
Also at the high school, the administration at York spent a lot of time working on trying to reduce costs or textbooks and things that weren't being utilized as much in the classroom. They went back and looked at everything that parents were purchasing for classes and really tried to make an effort to not provide things that parents would have to pay for if they weren't being utilized in the classroom. So, and also we talked about the textbook buyback policy where we refund. Well, it follows them to their senior year. We write a check to seniors afterwards for 70% of what they paid for the books if those books meet certain criteria, that the books are, the binding is still intact and that sort of thing, that they're still usable the next year. If we're still using that textbook the next year, they get a credit for 70% of what they paid for those textbooks.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think that's really important. You and your staff have done a good job of really trying to find out the true cost and make it as transparent to us as the board and the community. So I appreciate that. The next piece is about the financial assistance element, and I have two questions. One is with respect to, this is the typical financial aid criteria that we use in the district for students, right? That we're going to apply in this scenario as well, correct?
Right.
So it's a stringent criteria, okay. And so I just wanted clarification if I was reading this correctly. When you look at the bottom sections of both of these, pre-K through 8 and high school. So an example of a new fee that would be for the financial assistance would be instrumental music and vocal music on the pre-K to 8 that we're proposing for this year, but it would be eligible for waiver if you meet the financial assistance criteria, yes?
That's right.
Okay. And the same would hold true under the York fees waived. The items, for example, instrumental music again.
Yes.
If I see, okay. And vocal.
Generally, the things that are applicable for financial assistance are things that are required for classes.
Core education.
Things that are required costs for classes, and the music one, it was one that new this year, added to this list because we felt it was a course that we offered, and so we wanted all students to have the opportunity to take those courses. So that, and different from an extracurricular, it's one of our classes during the regular school day.
Right. And I commend the administration for re-looking at the club fees, so that for every single club that the student wants to be involved with, it was a $10 fee, even if it was a philanthropy, or a service club. So I mean, that was something that I heard loud and clear from the community, and I like the structure that you have created, which is it's a one-time fee, get active and get involved, because we know that the more active you are in, extracurriculars at the school, the better you will be from an academic standpoint. The studies just show that. So I commend the administration for doing that.
Before you move on, let me make sure I clarify that.
Okay.
That is the case at the high school. We still have a club activity per club charge for K through 8. And the reason we differentiate it is that there are lots and lots of offerings at the high school level, and we felt that this structure definitely encourages participation, where at the elementary and middle school, there wasn't as many offerings and not as many participants, where that switching to this type of blanket fee would make sense.
Right.
And I spoke with the principals in the elementary level and at the middle school level, and switching to a blanket fee didn't make sense for them. So we are sticking to the $10 per club activity at the K through 8 level.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, and actually clarification on my comment about the service clubs is they would sometimes get hit twice, both from their national service organization fee and then ours. So that was really the specific issue that would come up. I guess what I'm looking at is from this fee structure, and this might be too premature, for an answer, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, and the financial assistance. Since we increased fees last year, the YSET organization was created to offset some of that. Does this mitigate it, or have we not taken it to that step?
I think this definitely mitigates it as far as the instrumental music and the vocal music. The biggest area that we have not mitigated that it would be in the athletic fees area. So there still would be a need for YSET related to athletic fees.
And that would be high school and middle school from an athletic standpoint, since we're doing the clarification between the two, right?
Well,
okay.
Both,
okay.
yes.
The need, okay. I have two more questions.
Also for textbooks, though, because YSET did offset the cost of some students' textbook. And while I think parents are going to see a reduction in the fee cost related to textbooks next year because of the administration working with the staff to eliminate new additions as often as we do and making more conscious decisions. And also the 70% payback, changing that criteria will, I think, give more money back to parents in the pocket. But I still think the textbook fee, I think some parents are still going to be requesting YSET for help with that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for reminding me the 70% textbook payback is a great creation that you've proposed. The last question that I have is with respect to when you reduce the activity bus, one at the middle school and one at the high school. Do we know yet the impact of that? I mean, go ahead.
We gathered numbers from the high school, and I have at the finance committee level, I had the detail of all those buses each day, and clearly eliminating 1 out of 4 routes will increase the amount of students on those activity buses and could increase the amount of time on a bus, but the numbers are small. When you look at the detail of the daily number of students that take these buses, the numbers aren't that big. I'm looking at 40s. 52 is the highest for 4 routes, 4 buses is the highest daily total that I see. 54, 50, 40, but we're talking about 4 different full-size buses for that number of students. And at the middle school, they felt like they averaged 40 students per day, so that's 20 on each bus generally. That's a general thought. So, so eliminating it would increase the number of students on a bus.
Right, okay. But you did look at the impact, and I think that's what's important, is that we use data. So, thank you for listening to us, saying we want to know, we want to start tracking what the impact is of these changes that we made last year. And so based on that, we have the data to make intelligent decisions to move forward, and we have rationale to explain it to people. So thank you.
Mrs. Hirsch, you had another question?
I just had a quick one. I know the state legislature is looking at making significant changes to driver's ed vehicles and expenses, and I'm not sure I understood the rationale for us increasing our fees for driver's ed. I understand that it's an expensive program to run. I also think that there's some state reimbursement, and there's kind of a matching and a cap. And could you just help me understand if the increase in driver's ed fees is tied to the changes in legislation that we're expecting in terms of vehicle inspections, maximum number of miles, as well as the reimbursement rate from the state?
We're not concerned about any safety inspections on our driver's ed vehicles because they're very well maintained. However, we do have a few aging vehicles, and our new plan that we discussed in finance was to buy a new driver's ed vehicle every year, one per year. We have 6 driver's ed vehicles. So within a 6-year period, we will have a 6-year useful life of a vehicle and a rotation so that they'll be 6 years old once we get this cycle going. But it is an added cost to do that. But it's important also that we have vehicles that don't get to as old as our current ones are, which might be 11, 12 years old. We have a few that are that old, even though our maintenance department does maintaining those vehicles. So I do think that we have added costs now in making sure that we are constantly rotating our driver ed vehicles. And so I do think that there is a relationship between the increase in fees and now the more conscious effort of buying vehicles every year.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Welton, thank you very much. And I guess a discussion, first of all, a couple of thank yous. First of all, Mr. Purnell, thank you very much for bringing this to the board a meeting before we're going to vote on it, so we have plenty of time to think about it. And then just a comment about the students, parents, and teachers at York that got together and formed the YSET organization. They've made a heroic effort and quite a bit of difference in many of our students' lives so that they can afford extracurricular activities, sports, et cetera, when we were in an attempt to close our budget gap last year, raise fees quite significantly. And I think at some point the board should have a discussion with the community about fees versus taxes, and that's a whole big discussion that we're not going to have tonight, though. Moving along to the approval of board meeting minutes. We have 3 meetings worth of minutes to consider: March 20th, April 3rd, and April 10th. Are there any proposed changes to those minutes? Mrs. Stufen.
For March 20th meeting minutes, I'm going to say page 11, Ellen, where it talks about board improvement update. The sentence is, the survey questions are assessing how well we are working. It should read, strike working and say accomplishing our governance priorities. The only other item I have, when you're ready, is April 3rd's meeting minutes. I'm sorry I didn't make a note. I'm sure it's board improvement again because I'm referenced, oh no, it was a comment. And it says she referring to Mrs. Stufen, she wants the board, and that should be stricken. It was the high school administration to, act more thoughtfully is the way that you ended the sentence, but it's really, think about what the process is and be, thoughtful and deliberate about adding courses, deleting courses, what's the bigger picture with our curriculum vision, et cetera.
Any other changes? Mrs. Ebner.
Thanks. This is very minor. We already went over this with the curriculum minutes. Page 10 for March 20th at the bottom. We want to change the word from expelled to suspended.
I'm sorry, what?
Page 10 of March 20th. Very bottom.
Oh.
Just a word change. Okay, thanks.
Any others? Do I hear a motion to approve the board minutes?
I move to approve the board minutes, meeting minutes. I don't remember the 3 dates. From March 20th,
April 3rd,
and April 10th.
As amended, right?
As amended, please.
All right, motion by Mrs. Stufen a second by Mr. McDonough. This only requires a voice vote, is that correct? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is board committee reports. And I will do the Finance and Operations Committee. And I have, or actually, with Mr. Welton out of the room, may I just suggest that we go out of order until he returns and talk about the Performance Management Committee meeting? Would that be okay?
Performance Management Committee, wow, met April 12th. We had an ongoing discussion about district performance indicators and really spent some time ensuring that all the things that we're looking to measure map into the board governance priorities. So this has been an ongoing conversation. There are a couple of things that we identified as things that we wanted to put forth to the rest of the board for consideration. So under student learning and achievement, we identified there's a lack of a writing achievement indicator. And the concern expressed was that if we look at all of the curriculum indicators, there's nothing in anything that was really focused on improving our students' writing skills. And it is costly to implement a writing assessment, but it was something that we were, I guess, challenging the administration, Dr. Charles and his team, to see if there was some way that we could attempt to capture the relative importance of writing instruction within the district. There were a couple of other things that we've been honoring, things that we've been recognizing, things that we value, National Merit Scholars. We had talked a great deal about professional learning communities and how we assess the status of the different professional teams within the district. Dr. Charles had presented at a curriculum meeting a tracking tool that allows us to, each team working with the building principal, to come up with an assessment on a scale of 1 to 9, where the team is in their effectiveness and their maturity, I would say, in being a high-performance learning community, learning team. And so that was something that we were looking to add in terms of an indicator, again, feeling that indicators are things that we're going to be asking the entire organization to be tracking. And if it's one of the most important things that we believe in terms of having our teachers operating in high-performing teams, that we should measure it. Behavioral referrals, we were looking for a little bit further definition in terms of what types of behavioral referrals we would see at the different grade levels and the resolution. In operations and organizations, we had talked in transportation about student time on the bus, and I guess this is an on-time delivery, I guess, of students, but it's really thinking about the level of service that we're providing. We've struggled with bus routes, how many we have, is it worth having 2 after-school bus routes? And I think the district performance indicators that were brought forth were how many miles we traveled, how many bus routes we have, but I think we were trying to change a little bit to have the focus be on the things that we want to make decisions on. Board governance, we added board member professional development, our investment in time and going to the conference in November, and ongoing professional development for board members. In communications and community relations, there were a number of things. The DPIs that are there are really focused on kind of our communications organization and reaching out. And we were looking to determine some way to measure parents' satisfaction with the tools like PowerSchool, report cards, parent-teacher conferences, and actually collect some feedback from the school liaison program and seeing how effective that program has been. So these were areas that we wanted to tee up for consideration under communications, community relations. In culture, we had talked about satisfaction with the mentoring program for our staff, as well as the PLC tracker that I had talked about, and as well as getting some feedback from our new teachers and their orientation and their indoctrination into the district. In financial planning, we had added a metric where we have been, for the last 2 years, achieved American School Business Officials Achievement for Excellence. We thought that was something that was important to the organization and continue to track that and add that. So that was really the discussion about DPIs. Moving forward, we're anticipating that we'll have part of our board retreat, which we need to get some dates around in June, to spend some time going over all the district performance indicators, looking at our current state, if you will, and where we are, and setting some goals in terms of what we would like to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years. And the second area of discussion was really district job descriptions and getting a handle on of all of the different types of employees that we have, how covered are we in terms of accurate and current job descriptions to ensure that both the administration as well as the employees feel confident that they have a good, solid understanding of what their job responsibilities are, that they're current, they're up to date, and that we have covered all of the different types of jobs within the district. That's primarily the meeting that we had. Are there any questions? Yeah.
A question about the district performance indicators. For curriculum, we worked on, for months, a list of academic district performance indicators, and I wasn't aware that it would go to your committee, and then there would be alterations to this. So I'm surprised to see this list, and I think it either needs to be vetted with the committees versus spending time at our retreat going through this list and determining if this should be added to the district performance indicators. But we can do that in committee because we have so much to do in the retreat.
These were considered, what we did is we took the board priorities that we set off at the beginning of the year, and we looked at each of the individual sub-items that we had set. So when we looked at curriculum, we looked at all the different areas. Some of the things came up, so these are additive, these are not, and these are things that are for consideration.
So will go back to the committee and we can work on that over the next month? Or
yeah, we feel like
what
this
will
is
the protocol be? How are we going to use the minutes?
It's a very iterative process. So what we were trying to do in our committee was identify what gaps we had. So these were some of the gaps that we identified. I think I have no problem with them going back to the committee and talking about them. I think we were just trying to identify things that we might, that didn't jibe between the board governance priorities at the beginning of the year and where we were. So they can go back to committee and be discussed again. I think this is going to be an iterative learning process as we come up with what it is that we want to track.
I just want to avoid. It's going to be very time consuming if we try to do this at the retreat, so I'd rather try to do it in committee over the next month.
Well, can I also say, too, I want to review that with my administrative team. I mean, these were suggestions from the performance management team, but I also want input from my administrators on how practical some of the additions are, whether we think we can have data to support some of these, and how they might look. So, we'll come back, and I guess my intention was to bring it back to those committees. And I think what the process was, performance management was going to look at all the DPIs as a whole, and if there were significant gaps or questions, they would clarify those, bring those to administration. We would consider those and then bring those back to the committees, with ultimately at the retreat just having pretty close to a final copy of what the DPIs are going to look like initially, and that was the intention. So.
Okay. Any other questions for performance management? Mr. Deroni.
I'm struggling with what the committee is doing with job descriptions. I'm not sure it's the purview of the board to be dabbling in job descriptions. I just think it's a little bit of us on the dance floor rather than the balcony. Can you tell me what the focus is on the job descriptions?
The emphasis wasn't necessarily to look at the job descriptions and see what was in them. It was more from a human capital management perspective that we have clear expectations across the board for all of our employees. That's something that we valued. We felt as though it's important to communicate and make sure that our employees are comfortable and confident with what they're being asked to do. Changes have been made over the years, and I think there are many assumptions and things that aren't necessarily spelled out in each individual job description. Some job descriptions go back several years, and some jobs have morphed over the years. And there are assumptions and things that aren't quite as clear. And so I think the goal was to have an emphasis on having complete job descriptions for all employees and have some consistency across those. So it wasn't that we were looking at individual job descriptions, it was ensuring that each position within the district had an accurate and current job description as much as possible.
It's just my feeling that that's why we've hired the superintendent, and that's why we have an HR director to do that sort of thing. That's all.
Any comments on that from the board? Where, Mr. Purnell, do you, no?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, well, that's a valid point. Let's keep that discussion going. Any other questions for performance management? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Finance and Operations Committee, which I am going to ask Mr. Welton, Mr. McDonough, and Mr. Bloom to help me out here, because in my haste between getting off the train, changing my clothes, and coming here, I've left my notes on my counter at home. So our committee meeting started out with David Smith talking about his technology budget, which the majority of which seemed to be maintenance items for our network, and then some purchase of classroom technology, upgrades to some pilot program technology, and then some additional pilot program technology. Mr. Bloom suggested that kind of a division of how we're spending our technology budget this year be categorized into maintenance, cost savings initiatives, and technology enhancements, so that and then put in our budget at a glance document, which we thought was a good idea, because I think it would help the public, understand where their resources are going, and may also highlight the amount that's just going into maintenance as opposed to new things to enhance learning, but that is just the state of our budget. I'm going to the next thing we talked about was March financials, and our meeting was the 8th of March. Things have already changed, so I'm going to hand this portion over to Mr. Welton. Our initial report was how much the state owed us, but in the last few days, some checks arrived in the mail. So let me turn it over to Mr. Welton.
At our finance committee, we talked about the state, how much the state owed us as of March 31st. And at that time, they were basically 2 quarters behind on quarterly mandated categorical payments. This week, we've received 1.1 million. So we were at 2.4 million. We received 1.1 million. So we are currently owed approximately 1.3 million from the state. The state is about 4.5 months behind schedule. So the payment that we received today and yesterday were scheduled for December 30th. But this is the 4th quarterly mandated categorical payment that we received this year. And as you know, the budget we had only budgeted for 3 payments. So this will result in a favorable variance at the end of the year for our 2012 financial statements.
We also discussed the 2011 property tax extension, new growth, and particularly as it pertains to the Elmhurst Memorial Hospital property. I'm going to defer any detailed discussion of this until our May 8th meeting, because every day something new appears. We have our law firm working with the county to uncover all the nuances of this, and hopefully we can resolve this, because right now it's looking like it's not in the favor of the district for many reasons that we'll talk about on May 8th. But if I go into too much of it now, a lot of it's bound to change by the 8th of May, so let's just do it once. Mr. Welton also walked us through the student fee proposal that you've seen here tonight, so I won't spend any time on that. It was the exact same presentation. And then our last item was a status report on our facility usage meeting. We've invited all of the entities that rent the school district's facilities from us for various activities to come to a meeting and talk about the fees that we've charged them in the past, versus what our actual costs look like. And we're purely reaching out to the people who use our facilities and explaining to them what our finances, in terms of what our costs actually are versus what they're paying. And it should be, and that meeting will be Monday, April 30th at 7 p.m. And I do want to point out that Mr. Bloom will be moderating that meeting. Yes, you may.
And one thing I would encourage, beyond just the folks that rent the facilities, but anybody that uses them. I mean, for instance, there's some baseball teams which there's not necessarily rental agreements in place with, but I mean, this is intended to talk about our costs and the fees that go with it, but also, the reservation procedures and priorities and things. I mean, to basically look at the entire program about how we manage the facilities with and the goals and objectives that we have for the facilities, including 100% usage with our our community. So it's a general customer discussion. And so I would encourage anybody that uses the facilities to come and join us to share their perspective.
And that was our entire meeting. Moving on to the superintendent's consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Gironi.
I have a question for the Finance Committee. What's happening with TIF? What's happening with the intergovernmental agreement review?
Right now, the city has hired their consulting firm for phase 2 of their TIF project. That consulting firm is currently doing their work, and the city feels that they'll have things to talk to us about once their consulting firm is done with that study. And in their estimation, that is this summer to early fall before there's really anything substantial to talk about. Meanwhile, on the intergovernmental agreement, we continue to do our homework and get a full understanding of that. And then as part of those TIF discussions, we'll bring that into those discussions simply to make sure that everybody is living up to their parts of the agreement.
So we have heard back from the city. The last time I tuned in was the city was going to come back to us. It was a Finance Committee meeting early in the year, I think, with their understanding of what that agreement meant, because suddenly there was disagreement on that. And has that happened?
That Finance Committee meeting I did not attend, so let me defer to Mr. McDonough.
I think Mr. Welton has exchanged some received some documents from the city. Is that right? Historical documents that can help interpret the extent of the obligation and how it should move forward. There's supposed to be annual meetings, an annual discussion between the city and the school district, and that's kind of preparatory to those discussions taking place. But some
You're not talking about the
documents
joint annual review meeting?
No, not the JRB, the Joint Review Board. That meeting is something separate. This is a meeting, it's called out in one of the sections of the intergovernmental agreement, where the city and the school district sit down and talk about what things look like, what the numbers look like, what the surplus is going to look like when the city begins paying it, when the expiration, I believe, is 2014.
I think it's 2015.
2014-2015 fiscal year of the city, I believe.
Might not the outcome of that meeting have influence the way the city would go forward on TIF in the future? I mean, we've never had that meeting.
it's definitely time to start having those meetings.
I'm sure we can reach out to them and ask them to get together with us again. But in terms of discussion of any new TIF, it's clear there's not a whole lot to discuss with them until their consultant finishes phase 2. I believe it was 1 or 2 city council meetings ago where they just authorized the budget to spend the money to pay the consultant to start their work on phase 2.
And what is the outcome of, what is that consultant going to deliver?
The consultant is going to do the financial work necessary to help the city council decide of the 3 proposed TIF districts, how many they want to move forward on, and exactly what is included in those TIF districts. And they said, without that information, there really just wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Chris?
I mean, one other thing to point out, I mean, since I don't know, a few meetings ago when we had this discussion, I think, Jim Grabowski, I think, Dave, you have regular conversations with him, or Chris. I mean, you guys, there's a communication line that's open back and forth. So there are periodic updates. There's just nothing in the pipeline. So I just don't want to give the impression that we're not talking to the city or that we haven't connected some of these dots. Now, we can move faster on some things, as you point out, Susan, but I just don't want anybody walking away with the impression that we're still reading about it in the paper, because that's not the case. I think the communication lines are much better now than they were.
The city administration and the school district administration are in contact about this, as well as the finance committee is in contact with the appropriate aldermen on the committee that are responsible for it. And we've all agreed that the line of communications we're going to keep open, and it's when it's relevant to talk about things that we're going to talk about them. We understand each other loud and clear that this is something that it's in both parties' interests to be very involved as early as possible in the planning process.
Thank you. That helps. I would just appreciate updates when you do have conversations with the city on this. I think the full board would like to know where we are and how we're moving forward, because we do get questions about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We will. Anything else on finance and operations?
Yes. I wanted to just give a brief update on the refunding bond issue. On Friday, I had a rating interview with Standards & Poor's. William Blair had distributed a sales memo to their sales force regarding our refunding bond issue. Today, we received confirmation that we have maintained our AA+ rating with a stable outlook. I had a conversation today with Chapman and Cutler regarding a due diligence disclosure. The Disclosure Council had interviewed me on this, just the state of the district. They're mailing the preliminary official statement to institutional and retail investors. On Monday, April 30th, there will be a 3 p.m. conference call on preliminary pricing, views, market condition update, and review of comparable bond issues. Tuesday, May 1st, they plan to market the bonds to investors, price the bond issue in a negotiated sale using a Dutch auction method, which is like an eBay for bonds. At 3 p.m., the presentation where they'll have final pricing to board delegates via a conference call, then we would sign the bond purchase agreement with William Blair, finalizing terms, prices of the bonds. May 2nd through May 29th, we'll be signing and processing, filing, closing documents, and then May 30th would be the refunding bond issue. And the market for this bond issue is at a good it's in a good spot. There's demand in the market for these bonds, and so the timing is good for this bond issue.
Thank you very much. Yeah, right now interest rates are in our favor again. It sounds like the week of May 1st, William Blair has moved along quickly. And by the way, a Dutch auction in the bond market is probably the most efficient way to solicit indications of interest in a bond, and it provides the bond issuer the best pricing that is available. And for anybody who wants to learn about the nuances of Dutch auctions, I won't waste your time here, but you can ask me. And then also to point out that in the rating scale of S&P, AA+ is the second highest rating. Next to AAA, it is a very, very high bond rating, and right now I understand the municipal bond market, those very highly rated bonds are in very, very high demand. So hopefully we will get very, very good execution. Thank you, Chris, for staying on top of that and moving it along quickly. Anything else for finance and operations? Hearing nothing, then let's move on to the superintendent's consent agenda, which uses a lot of letters in the alphabet this meeting. Items A through P. Would anyone like any of the items A through P removed?
The administration is requesting that we pull out approval of high school, item G, approval of high school and middle school instructional materials, and we can talk about that separately.
All right. Mr. Durrani, go ahead.
Could we remove item F also?
Sure.
Approval of school maintenance program grant.
Yep. So we're going to remove items G, or F and G, to do them in order. Now, do we discuss those, or Mrs. Durrani, please help me here. Do we discuss those, or do we approve the rest of the items first? What is the?
Approve the items.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agreement except for items F and G?
I move that we approve the superintendent's consent agenda minus items F and G.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDonough, second by Mrs. Durrani. Any of these, do we need a voice vote? Do we need a voice vote? Okay, Ellen, go ahead. Roll call vote, thank you.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Ms. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Ms. Ebner?
Yes.
Seven ayes, no nays, motion passes. Next to items F and G.
I move that the Board of Education approve pursuing the building envelope repair and restoration project at Lincoln Elementary School and submitting this project for matching grant funds through the ISB School Maintenance Project Grant application.
Second.
All right. Motion by Mrs. Hirsch, second by Mrs. Durrani. Any discussion? Please, Mrs. Durrani.
I just wanted to pull it out so that we could make note of the fact for the public that we will get up to $50,000 with this matching grant. We need to spend $50,000 to improve our buildings or repair or restore our buildings. We can easily do that. I want to thank the administration, Mr. Hsu, for applying for us, and that's really all I had to say. It's free money.
Yeah, thank you. And any other discussion? One question I have, Mr. Welton, Mr. Hsu, of the work that's being done at Lincoln, I don't even know how to categorize this. Are we patching up? Are we doing full restoration work? Kind of at what level of the scale are we repairing Lincoln? Thank you for coming up.
Yeah, if you recall, the building envelope study performed by Structure Tech identified the immediate and failed concerns at Lincoln School to total an estimated budget number of around $400,000. Because of the uncertain future of the building, and the lack of funds, we were loath to spend that entire $400,000 now. So we went back to them and talked about what are the immediate, keep the building usable and safe needs in that. What can we do? So the scope that has been drawn out is a repair and restoration only where absolutely necessary scope. To contrast this to the West Face Field project, where we did a complete restoration and locked that building up so we expect no problems on that west face for years to come, including going inside every single window, replacing every single rusting or swelling lintel, which is the support structure over the window that will cause the masonry to move and joints to fail. At Lincoln, we're just identifying the ones where it's obviously already causing huge failures in the masonry. You can see bricks and stuff starting to move away from the building. So the attempt here is to seal the building up, keep water from getting in, and to address those areas where we obviously have the potential for envelope failure in the next 2 to 3 years. That obviously leaves about $250,000 of what were considered fairly primary needs at Lincoln's building envelope unaddressed. So that's where it stands.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions for Mr. Hsu? This would require a roll call vote, is that correct?
Money, it's just an invitation.
Oh, all right. It would not then. It would not? Is that consent?
It was on consent. Consent calls for roll call vote. Now that you pulled it off, I would still suggest you roll call that vote.
All right. Ellen, thank you.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Ms. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Motion F passes, 7 ayes, no nays. And I have a motion for item G. Mrs. Hirsch.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the high school and middle school materials as recommended by the administration.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Hirsch, seconded by Mrs. Deroni. Any discussion?
From the administration, we would like the board to approve the recommendations for the high school materials that are before you this evening. However, we would like to pull out the middle school materials, which are supplemental novels. We want to revisit the process for approving those novels, so we would like that pulled out this evening, and we will revisit this at a future board meeting as we go through a process for that middle school approval.
Any discussion about pulling out the middle school novels from this motion? Mrs. Deroni.
I move that we amend the motion to strike the words middle school materials, so that the motion will now read that the Board of Education adopt the high school materials as recommended by the administration.
Moved by Mrs. Deroni, seconded by Mrs. Hirsch. To amend Ms. Hirsch's initial motion. Thank you for helping me through this. Any discussion? Mr. McDonough?
I'm wondering if you could please describe the process. If you read the statute, it looks like we, as a board, approved these books. However, that's a bit of a legal fiction. We rely on the professionals to recommend based on criteria that we provide. There's a public review process, there's committee review. It's a very comprehensive process, and it has some really good features to it. I wonder if you could summarize it just briefly, or Dr.
I'm going to let Dr. Johns do that.
The initial selections for the books were chosen by committee structure at the high school after reviewing a variety of texts to meet the needs for the curriculum instruction. Changes in prevailing material that needs to be taught at the high school level or for new courses, All the books then were sorted according to the proper coordinator. All the coordinators reviewed the books as well. And if there were areas of concern, there was a back and forth between the coordinators of central office and the administrators at the building. During this time, to remind you, we were looking for ways to cost cut as well. So some things dropped off the list as we were looking for ways to not use materials in an attempt to save costs for families. After that, the next part in the process is that the list was brought forward to the subcommittee, was brought forward to this board to begin the process as stated in the school code, which led a 30-day review, which was held. We had one member of the community come in and review the materials and leave some notes for us for our review. And then that ends up here with about 45 days after with the final review process leading to the board.
These are materials for next year, or are they currently in use?
The high school materials are for next year.
I read through all 79 pages or whatever it was, the instructional material thing. It's in the public section of the agenda, and I think it's worth taking a look because it shows that very rigorous process to choosing things. I'm very impressed with some of the things that you've done to make it parent-friendly. Number one is the cost, taking classroom sets in lieu of individual purchases. I think that's very helpful to parents. A classic textbook that won't need replacement as often, the 19-year-old geometry book. I'm very impressed with that one. That one won't go out of style either. The e-text option, which kind of foreshadows what we heard from David Smith for the goal of getting to a one-to-one student device ratio, and we heard the finance side of that. We didn't hear the curriculum and instruction, but it sounds very exciting. And the alignment with the curriculum. I like the question on your form about what objectives have not been met by these things. So I'm just very, very impressed with the process of choosing materials. One thing I might suggest that you add is something about what is being replaced and when it was adopted, so you can kind of show the value that you're bringing to parents. I think that's really helpful. So, but I really did, I was impressed with the materials you provided. So we reviewed the review forms. We don't review the materials themselves, so.
Mrs. Droney.
Correct me if I'm wrong, these are just new materials that are being suggested for use at the high school. We don't every year go back and review everything the high school's using.
That is correct. What's before you for the high school is only new materials. We're in the process of encapsulating the materials that had been purchased in the past and bringing those that had not been reviewed and cleaning up that part of our past work. So that is future work that will be coming. But no, we do not review existing texts on a regular basis.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Walsh, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Hirsch?
Just a point of clarification. First, we need to vote on the clarification of the amended. So I'm going to vote yes to amending my original motion.
Thank you for that point of order and for keeping me on track here. So the motion we're voting on is the motion to amend the original motion.
And that can be just a voice vote.
Voice vote.
Okay. All in favor to amend the original motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries, 7 yes, 0 no's. Now, let's vote on the amended motion. Mrs. Walsh.
Ms. Hirsch? Yes. Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. We then move on to the superintendent's agenda, action items.
Yes, the next 3 items are related to our technology and media, and Dave Smith he will briefly walk you through all 3 of these, if you don't mind, David. Thank you.
Okay. I don't really know how much detail you're interested in hearing. I thought maybe I would just summarize where each of these falls in terms of the schemes that we talked about in the last finance subcommittee meeting. So the first one, the York Digital Media System upgrade, it's an existing system. I would categorize this in the maintenance category, or really it's maintaining our existing investment in a piece of infrastructure that provides a digital broadcast system for York High School, and it's used daily. And actually, the use of it is extending over time. They're starting to use it for more and more things. If you walk through York, you'll see some signage now with other announcements and things that are being played throughout the day. So this recommendation is to invest in a server and some software upgrade, professional services to enable us to continue to use that probably for another 5 years or so with this investment. And if you have, I'm going to go through all three maybe, and or would you like to do one at a time?
Why don't you go one at a time?
Okay.
So we would, vote the board if they're entertainment for a motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mrs. Duroni?
I move that the Board of Education approve the York Digital Media System upgrade at a cost not to exceed $13,000 in fiscal year 2013, and authorize the superintendent or superintendent's designee to execute all related project documents and agreements working with Sentinel and Cisco Digital Media Systems. Mrs. Walsh, I've added a phrase at the end of the one that's printed, working with Sentinel and Digital Systems.
Cisco
Digital Media Systems.
That's a mouthful. Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Duroni, second by Mrs. Hirsch. Mrs. Walsh? Oh, all right. Oh, thank you. It's well past my bedtime. Any discussion? Thank you again, Mrs. Duroni. Please.
Only to say that this was presented at the, whatever committee that was. What committee was that? I've been trying to go to them all.
Finance subcommittee.
And explained in great detail, and the synopsis here is just brief, but it's something we need to do. The upgrade really needs to be made.
It is the backbone of our entire network.
Actually, that's one that's coming up.
I'm sorry. Again, these committee meetings are running together. My apologies.
This investment allows us to continue to take advantage of features in the system without making us upgrade. We're basically landlocked on what we have now, which there's actually some features where we feel like we need to move on to. So,
thank you. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, now it's Mrs. Walsh's turn.
Yes.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
The next piece is approval of computer and network equipment lease, and Dave can give you the details on it.
Yes, no problem. This has two aspects to it, one of which was you alluded to a minute ago, the network equipment, which is our core switch, which means it basically is the heart of our network. Everything that passes through all of our buildings and all of our data processing goes through this switch. The switch that's being replaced is 10 years old. It was put in York with the renovation in 2002, and it's no longer supported by Cisco after November. So this would be, I would say, a mandatory maintenance expense that we need to take on. The computer aspect of this is really our annual refresh of computers that meet the criteria for replacement that we've set. So far, we have a 4-year replacement cycle for laptops and a 5-year for desktops. Although there are devices that are older than that based on their function in the district, and we are, I think, in conversation in the Finance Subcommittee and also with Mr. Welton, looking at extending our resources as much as possible in order to smooth out the peaks and valleys of our purchases. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we're going to have to work on. And this particular purchase, 90% of this is addressing student computers. Actually, over 90% of this is student computers. The rest of them would be for like a few staff members and some maintenance computers and things like that. In K-5 in particular, the laptops are being replaced. These would be the laptops that were put out 4 years ago with the curriculum adoption with the Reading Street in 2008. And it's also addressing some gaps in K-5 that were identified by staff in terms of students in certain, like in special ed or reading interventions that need increased access to computers. So it's replacing computers, but it's also trying to provide additional resources where gaps have been identified. And this recommendation is to lease that equipment with a 4-year dollar buyout lease. And we've gotten multiple quotes for leases and chose the most cost-effective one that was presented to us. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about this recommendation.
Any discussion?
Motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll catch on. I have a motion to approve item G, or I'm sorry, item B on the superintendent's agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve and authorize the superintendent or the superintendent's designee to execute the master lease purchase agreement, lease schedule, and other related documents with J.P. Morgan Chase Bank N.A. regarding certain computer and network equipment for school district use, not to exceed $1,035,000 in purchase price.
Second. Motion by Mrs. Hirsch, second by Mr. McDonough. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Walsh.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
7 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. Mr. Purnell.
Yeah, the final item this evening we would like the board to consider is the approval of desktop virtualization equipment purchase, and David can detail that also.
This item would fall more into an investment in operational efficiencies and improved end-user experience and also future cost savings. It's not necessarily a cost-saving move right now because it would be making an investment in the infrastructure to implement what's known as desktop virtualization or VDI is virtual desktop infrastructure or VDI. It's a technology where the end user devices can be very, dumb, so to speak, or thin is another way to describe it, where the intelligence is really in the network, and on the ends it's very it's really just a device to the users interact with, and it's it's much more efficient with in terms of power savings. It's much more efficient in terms of support, and it has long-term cost-saving potential. And there's several other benefits outlined in the recommendation. So with this also kind of ties to what I mentioned before about stretching out our resources that we've already got in the district. So this would enable us to allow existing desktop computers to be used, play the role of this thin client device, and allow us to extend the life of those devices however many years they'll survive, 1, 2, 3 years, whatever we can get out of them. So it also has other advantages for allowing student or staff access to desktops with any type of device within or outside of the district. So it has quite a bit of potential. My recommendation is that we make this investment, that we put this in place in the district. This would provide us the opportunity to do about 400 desktops, mostly in York High School next year. And that would, based on that, if that's successful and we find that it's got the benefits that we believe it does, then we could, in the future consider additional phases. But this would be an initial phase for up to 400 devices at York High School.
Do I hear a motion? Mrs. Hirsch?
I move that the Board of Education approve and authorize the superintendent or superintendent's designee to 1, purchase server equipment, storage area network equipment, thin client devices, software licenses, and professional services to implement a virtual desktop infrastructure environment at a cost not to exceed $190,000, and 2, execute related documents with Sigma Solutions, Inc.
Second.
I second the motion.
Moved by Mrs. Hirsch, seconded by Mrs. Stufen. Any discussion? Mrs. Hirsch.
I want to thank Dave for looking into this. This is something that's been going on in industry for quite a while. I think this is a really good move for us to try to move forward and really leverage the resources that we have.
Mrs. Stufen.
Thank you. Yes, I commend Dave for looking at this, and actually you've been researching it for some time and wanting to move in this direction, and I know that you've been cautious about spending your money. You actually gave us back money, and this is actually what corporations have been doing, and organizations outside of corporations like governmental entities and school districts. So thank you very much for making this more efficient.
You're welcome. Mr. McDonough.
I was interested how this plays into the refresh process that you're trying to initiate to smooth some of the bumps and some of the hardware that the district has. And I just wonder if you could summarize that for the entire board, because I found that very interesting and a good use of resources.
Well, this recommendation, the proposal here would allow, we would purchase 100 thin client devices, which are about the size of this black box here. But that because the technology that we're purchasing would actually enable us to have 400 desktops, what that would mean would be about 300 PCs that we currently have in our buildings their lives would be extended. I hope I'm hitting on what you're referring to. So in the end, we would end up with a mix. In the beginning, we would end up with a mix of the thin client devices, which are these efficient appliances with no moving parts and low maintenance costs and low power consumption. But a majority of what we would use would be existing resources that we already have and would normally be replaced on a refresh cycle. So we're going to extend the life of those, and as those begin to fade out, we can then come back later and say, replace them with these cheaper devices. So we get to smooth out the purchase a little bit, the purchase timeline, stretch it a little bit, and then when it comes time to purchase, you can purchase a cheaper device. So that's where the cost savings starts coming in, is down the line a little bit. We won't really see anything significant for a couple of years, but then down the line, it'll be much more cost effective to maintain. And of course, the landscape might change with what the instructional environments look like as well. I mean, I don't imagine that York High School will have 800 desktop devices for many years to come. I think things will begin to shift away from that into other things. So I think it provides us the flexibility to make these changes and do it in a cost-effective way down the line.
Anything else? Mrs. Walsh.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes. Next on our agenda is a review of upcoming meetings. Wednesday, April 25th is Board Improvement and Policy Committee, 7 p.m. in this building. That would be tomorrow. Monday, April 30th, the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, 7 p.m. in this building. And that meeting, again, will be moderated by Mr. Bloom. Wednesday, May 2nd, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, 7 p.m. in this building. Tuesday, May 8th, Board of Education meeting, 7:30 p.m. In this building. And these meetings seem to go on forever. Wednesday, May 9th, Finance and Operations Committee at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, May 10th, Performance Management Committee meeting at 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 22nd, Board of Education General Meeting at 7:30 p.m. And that leads me to board communications. Anything on the subject of board communications? If I can just convey one thing, if people have feelings about the committees they're currently on, this is the time of year when changes are made. If anybody has any desire to change committees, I'd also like to hear, if there's any desire to move people on our school's liaison program. Frankly, I'm kind of hoping I don't hear any because, I think it's a good program that the longer we are at those schools, the better off everybody is, just providing some continuity. But, you can call me, email me, and we'll discuss it from there. Now, anything I'm forgetting?
Motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
How about a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Deroni, seconded by Mrs. Hirsch. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 7 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Thank you.